Welcome in to Check the Mic. Steve Palazzolo and Sam Monson. We're live on YouTube. Harry hasn't gotten his picks in yet, so I'm trying to send the picks to my wife.
Yeah.
It's our Week 12 preview. We're going to make our picks. My 9-year-old's going to make his picks. We're going to have all sorts of fun, as we always do, game by game. But first, you should be wearing a Tigers hat.
Tigers hat. Whoop.
Yep. Tom Selleck.
The good news is, from the previous 5 minutes, that's the best way the opening of the show could have gone, you know? Could have been a lot worse.
It could have been. It could have been. Awkward silence is way better than bad voices.
A lot better.
Bad speech. Anyway,
yeah.
Give us an update on where everybody is with their picks. I'm going to send Harry these games to make sure that he gets them in here.
So as ever, we have a couple of pick'em league type things going in the Sleeper app in our Discord. That's what I was trying to say. We had a survivor pool going. There are still 5 people alive in this, which has been for a while. 5 ever-presents, that is. People have done every single week. That's been for quite some time. So still 5 people that have gotten every single week correct. A bunch more that have kind of added themselves in as we've been going. You can find the links to these in the announcements or the welcome section of our Discord. You find the Discord in the description of this show. And then the other thing we have is, of course, the Pick'em League. We are doing our picks every week on the preview show, and we have a Pick'em League going with the Discord. I climbed into the top 10 last week with a 12-win week, which was tied for the best of anybody in this pool.
You're in the top 10 now?
I'm in the top 10.
I think it's because some people stopped picking.
No. Just bad game or bad weeks from people. New Sports Thought has been at the top for a while now. He still leads the way with 98, along with somebody called Alec2, something weird name that doesn't really make sense English-wise. Anyway, those two have 98 wins. I am tied for 10th with 93 wins. It's only 5 wins back from the lead. You were at 86, and Harry is at 77.
Yeah, he's tied for 119th. Disappointing.
Well, that's still middle of the pack. There's 220 people, I think, in the league.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
so
a lot of them aren't picking anymore, but that's fine. He's doing all right.
Yeah, and then obviously the other update we need to give people is mustache related. I've ended up at the standard Selleck right now. I guess I need the Hawaiian shirt, but the standard Selleck is where we've ended up. I figure what we can do after that, we have a Steve wig, which I've unearthed from the locker over there. I think the next show maybe we just do standard Selleck with a wig. So that's really full Selleck if you think about it.
It's really,
he had kind of Steve-like hair.
Someone in the chat, K Hill, it's the Wade Boggs stash.
Okay.
You know Wade Boggs?
I know of him. I don't know.
What do you know about Wade Boggs?
I know his name, and I know he's a baseball player. Is that enough?
Oh, look at this. This is good. We'll drop this in the chat here. This is...
Maybe I can find a Hawaiian shirt as well, and I could actually go full Tom Selleck
we compare
on
you
Monday.
to Wade was my second favorite player growing up. Unbelievable hitter. Opposite fields. Used to just pepper the green monster.
This is a better stash than Wade Boggs.
It's similar.
It's not.
Similar color.
No, his is all like wavy and stuff at the end.
Yeah, Janko, the Wade Boggs drinking stories, 30 beers on a cross-country flight type of guy, fried chicken before every game. I could do a stance impersonation somewhere on Twitter. There's a stance impersonation of me with Wade Boggs and his inside-out swing.
No, this
is
a better stash than Wade Boggs. It is. It just is. His is more.
Stop it. He's not a good. He's a Red Sox. Red Sox for life.
But his is a lot more unkempt. It's not as solid and powerful.
Well, he was unkempt generally.
Yeah.
So
no, better stash than Wade
See if
Boggs.
I can find a better picture.
It's a standard Selleck.
Because he would go back and forth between beards.
See, look, this is better than that.
I don't know.
That's all like getting away from him at the end.
This is probably Wade in '86, I would say.
You know what that is? That's a fraudulent mustache. That is a mustache that requires length in order to get coverage.
Stop it.
Look at it. Look at the ends. That's like we've grown this out to try and cover the patchiness. I'm sorry. I have a better mustache than Wade Boggs. That's fact. I'm not taking that.
In his later years, as he's more balding, I think we get a better
comb over
comparison to you.
Wow, that's brutal. Anyway,
we're gonna talk some football here today. Yeah, so go check out the links in the description for Movember.
Yeah.
And again, I'm just I freshly shaved today. Yeah, that one. That's the one I was like. Isn't that? It's pretty close. Yours is fuller though. You've got.
That's what I'm saying. I have a better mustache than Wade Boggs. I also have similar hair cover than Wade Boggs at that point. Anyway.
Well.
I mean, if I grew this out, it would look as scraggly and bald as he does.
Wade was amazing. What a fun hitter to watch. Maybe a product of Fenway, don't you think? The monster?
Sure. Yeah.
Just serving it off the monster.
That's what I always thought.
All right, let's get to the games.
Yeah.
Let's start with San Francisco 49ers at the Green Bay Packers. Packers favored by 1.5 here. By the way, the whole show is brought to you by PrizePicks. You'll have your lineup later today. My lineup was unveiled yesterday. We'll be talking PrizePicks. $50 off when you deposit 5. Promo codes check the mic over at PrizePicks. 49ers and the Packers. Packers favored by 1.5. This is one of those big-time featured games. There's only 3 games in the 4 o'clock window this week. This is the big one, 4:25 Sunday. Packers are 7-3. Niners just 5-5. Still very much alive in the mix in the NFC West, but running out of time here. Stacking losses.
Yeah.
The Niners stacking losses in games, as we mentioned yesterday, 3 games where they've had over 90% win probability and come back and lost.
This would be bad time. You know, the way last week it looked, certainly for a quarter, that it was really bad timing to be saying that Joe Burrow is better than Justin Herbert when Herbert goes off and just starts like dropping dimes left and right. This would be bad timing to declare the 49ers still one of the top 5 Super Bowl contenders, as I did in yesterday's show.
You did.
If they just get wrecked
right
by Green
before
Bay,
the Packers game.
Put themselves in a real hole for the rest of the season. That would be terrible timing again. Yeah, I mean, it's a big game for San Francisco. They've lost these games that they should have won, and that has left them without much margin for error when they face good teams. And Green Bay is a good team. They're well coached. They're good on both sides of the ball. This is a really tough matchup for San Francisco.
It is a tough matchup for them. And again, it's much like with the Bengals when you go play by play and you look at the performance of the offense and the defense, and it's like, all right, is there a massive difference between this year's 49ers team and last year and previous years? Maybe not, but if a handful of plays keeping you from 7-3, 8-2, but you're running out of time. Like, you just can't keep losing those games here. So I don't know how to look at the Niners other than I do believe some of the depth has been hurt. Nick Bosa's banged up as well. We know how much that game changed without Bosa rushing the passer. We were touting Brock Purdy quite a bit early in the year. Has he taken another step? Has he, he hasn't played as well over these last couple of weeks. And you keep bringing up the point maybe that the Shanahan offense is not bringing those same advantages that they've brought in recent years. I will say the 2 injuries that are huge here. Jair Alexander missed time last week, came out of the game last week. He didn't practice as of yesterday. Nick Bosa came out of the game last week. He didn't practice yesterday. Part of the reason why I have Juwan Jennings and his receiving projection, more than his receiving projection in this game for the Niners, with potentially without Jair Alexander. So I think the Niners have an opportunity to have success through the air against the Packers here.
Yeah, Bosa is a critical potential injury, or injury that potentially affects whether he plays or not. Remember going into the season, we were doing things like ranking, talking about sort of defensive lines and pass rushing units and all those kinds of things. And the 49ers had a really good one, but it's incredibly thin. It's like based off Nick Bosa and Javon Hargrave, essentially. And the depth behind those guys is nowhere near where it is with other teams that can rush the passer. So if you take away Nick Bosa, well, now you're immediately completely transforming the outlook of that group, like the whole defense, but in particular the pass rush, the defensive line. Like, that's a major, major loss for them if he's not able to play.
Just some perspective on that. Bosa has 52 pressures, 8 sacks per PFF. I like to use the PFF sack totals because it adds up the half sacks, gives them credit. Leonard Floyd's second on the team with 35 pressures. Malik Collins has 30, so he's third. But the pass rush grade, again, that is more dependent on how quickly are you winning, how dominant are those wins. Leonard Floyd has always been this grade in like the 60s type of pass rush type of guy. Not a dominant pass rusher. He's very good at cleaning up. When he's had Aaron Donald, he mopped up, had a lot of sacks. When he has a Nick Bosa, he's very good with his length at just cleaning up after someone else creates the pressure, right? Leonard Floyd is a one-on-one, go ahead and affect the game type of guy. Never really been that guy. So if you don't have Nick Bosa, you're depending on a Leonard Floyd, Malik Collins combination.
Yeah, I mean, it's a perfect example of like if you have a defensive front that has Javon Hargrave, Nick Bosa, Leonard Floyd. It's like, yeah, Leonard Floyd's a useful complement to that group. If he's if you take away the other 2 and it's just Leonard Floyd to lead the line, that's terrible. I mean, if Leonard Floyd is your best pass rusher on the field, you're in the Carolina-Atlanta world of generating nothing.
So just staying on that side of the ball, and where the Niners have been excellent, number 2 PFF coverage grade in the NFL so far this year. Renardo Green playing really well as a rookie back there. I mean, the Niners have done a nice job. Fred Warner, of course, patrolling the middle. They've done a nice job just in the back seven generally. But with the Packers, the challenge is you just don't know who it is every week. Is it Jaden Reed? Last week it was Christian Watson. When's Romeo Doubs going to get his? Like every single week it's someone different. Tucker Kraft. And they've just done a really good job spreading the ball around and finding ways to move the ball.
Yeah, I think it sort of represents they're not wedded to any particular way of playing in the passing game. Like they can go after wherever the gaps are. They've got receivers to take advantage of every potential weakness, and you need to be sound everywhere on defense, and that's a difficult thing to do. So this is a really challenging game, I think, for San Francisco.
It is. So Packers favored. I think coming into the season, probably the schedule makers anticipated we would have looked at this as a potential NFC championship preview, right? Yeah. The Eagles are up there. The Lions are up there as far as the best teams in the NFC. Niners need this one, man. I think they really need it. And then from a Packers perspective, this is still a potential statement game for them because I think the Niners are very much a very good team. And it looks like George Kittle's back for the Niners as well. They need their playmakers, man. They need those dudes to take over. And then I'm just curious, like if the Niners do have a lead late, what happens, right? Is this becoming a trend where if they have a lead that they can't hold on to it? Any thoughts on Jordan Love so far this year in his play? Because we talked a lot last year about how well he played down the stretch. This was the time, right? Right around this time last year where they flipped the switch and were outstanding. They won that Thanksgiving game against Detroit, which was a big surprise. Can Love go on one of those runs? He hasn't really had one of those runs where he looked unstoppable last year.
So his career, you can almost, in terms of playing time, you can almost divide his career up into 3 blocks, right? There was like the first 8 games of last year. Then there was the kind of 8 games where he turned it on and became one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. And then there's been this season. And this season feels like it's split the difference between the two. Like the first 8 games of last year was sort of wildly inconsistent. It's like, okay, there's something here, but it's not great. And then boom, switch flipped. Suddenly he's laser accurate. He's delivering the ball exactly where it needs to be. He genuinely looks like one of the best quarterbacks in football. And then this year he's been in the middle. Like he's not hit the heights of last year yet, but he's been more accurate and he's been at a consistently higher baseline than like the first 8 games of last year, but not quite back where he looked amazing. Hasn't picked up where he left off, essentially. So maybe this is his baseline. Like maybe last year either extreme was a little bit over the top, right? He wasn't as bad as literally the first 8 games he starts in the NFL, which makes sense. But neither was he as good as, wow, he's about to be joining Mahomes and Josh Allen as elite top quarterback in football. Actually, he settled in somewhere in the middle, which is, reasonably high baseline, capable of spectacular plays, probably going to make some more mistakes than some other quarterbacks. And he's good. He's good, not great at the moment.
And as the chat reminds us, battled a lot of injuries this year. That's been a factor. I think he's played a little bit more consistent over these last few weeks. But yeah, I'm interested to see because look, from a Packers perspective, I'll say the same thing I said about the Texans. Their upside is still there. The Packers haven't even tapped into the superhuman-ish Jordan Love that we saw last year. Again, against the Chiefs on Sunday Night Football, against the Lions, falling away, pinpoint throws, rolling out, hitting dudes on the run. We haven't seen as much of that this year. Makes me think the Packers maybe even have a higher ceiling, and they're sitting here at 7-3 at this point with 2.5 wins from Malik Willis, basically. This year. So it's been impressive from the Packers. Over-unders 47.5 too, so Vegas expecting a lot of points from our friends over at FanDuel. Where are you going to go with this one?
I'm going to go with the Green Bay Packers. I believe this might be a tough one for the 49ers.
I'm going to give the Niners one more chance here.
They need it, so they got to get it.
Yeah, they need it. It's on the road. I'm going to go with them. Harry's going to take the Packers. We did get the picks in.
This could be an emotional hedge for me because, if Green Bay wins, I was correct. And
you just called the Niners a top 5 Super Bowl contender.
That's what I mean. If Green Bay wins, it's great. It's good for my picks. But if they lose, then my mentions are more pleasant.
Wow. Just put your money where your mouth is, man. All right, here we go. Philadelphia Eagles at the Los Angeles Rams. Sunday Night Football in L.A. Oh, the Eagles fans are going to be in full force in L.A. for Sunday Night Football. Eagles favored by 2.5 here. They're 8-2. Rams 5-5. I'm looking forward to this game, man. I might not wait all day. I'm not going to wait all day for this. We got other stuff to do, but I'm going to be excited once 8:20 hits Sunday night for this one.
Yeah, good game. This is going to be fascinating because in multiple areas, in particular, I think like the more interesting side of the ball to me, I think, is definitely Philadelphia's defense against the Rams' offense. And I think it's really interesting in several different areas. I think the secondary is interesting. I also think that Eagles' defensive line going up against the Rams' offensive line in its current iteration is really interesting. So that side of the ball, I think, is going to be an absolutely fascinating watch.
So we got Quinyon Mitchell, Cooper DeJean. We back to DeJean now?
It just people.
I'm going to say it differently every time just to. That'll be my emotional head.
Well, this is one of those things where he seemed to have determined it was pronounced differently to the way everybody was pronouncing it. And then there was like a brief, people just ignored that, as opposed to, recently there's been a spate of actually his name is pronounced differently. And now we're saying like all these name pronunciations have changed. Cooper DeJean should have said, no, it's actually pronounced, and people just ignored it. Sorry, it's DeJean.
Don't care what you say.
Yeah.
But we're getting a lot of hype for the two rookies, and I think they've been
justifiably so.
Yeah, they've been very good. Maybe a little too much. I'm a huge Quinyon Mitchell fan, but the people said the words 2009 Revis in the same sentence.
Who said that?
The people are. I've seen it out there.
The people?
Seen it out there.
For his season?
Brett Coleman, our friend Brett Coleman's out there like charting Revis's 09, which by the way it's already been charted by PFF. But he's over there like going through and trying to show people like, oh, you don't mention Quinyon and Revis in the same breath. Like, yeah, no kidding. Don't do that. But he's going through the work to prove it out. But people are stacking up. Well, Mike Evans and was it Malik Neighbors? Did he face Neighbors? Jamar Chase, CD Lamb. Like they're going through all these receivers and the fact that Quinyon hasn't given up per PFF more than 2 catches in a game since week 4 in Tampa Bay. Like that is really good. But you just can't compare it to 09 Revis.
No, for a variety of different reasons. That would be silly. That would be a bad thing to do.
But Quinyon's been very good.
Yeah.
And so you get those two guys, Quinyon, DeJean in particular, Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua, outstanding matchup.
Yeah, I mean, so yes, it is. By the way, one of the reasons you can't. I mean, Darius Slay has only given up 18 catches for 189 yards. Like they're playing a defense that's generally not giving up a lot to outside receivers, to corners. Like it's a defensive thing as opposed to a look. Quinyon Mitchell is playing lights out in lockdown coverage every single rep, right? It's a wildly different. This is why the Terry McLaurin stat thing was annoying. It's like, yeah, Quinyon Mitchell played well in that game. No, he didn't play snap after snap, locking down Terry McLaurin individually and giving him no room to work with. Like Washington barely passed to a wide receiver. Like at halftime, it was like 9 targets to Austin Eckler and like 1 to a wide receiver. It was like, that's not a look. Quinyon Mitchell has eliminated Terry McLaurin. That's the defense has suffocated Washington and their passing game isn't functioning. So yeah, but Mitchell, Cooper DeJean going up against Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp. I mean, those are 2 really good receivers to test them against.
Yeah, it's Stafford coming off of a really good game. I mean, we're at this. I think if you look at the totality of Matthew Stafford's season, it hasn't been great, relative to expectations. But you've seen glimpses of it, right? It felt like he had turned the corner against Minnesota last week against the Patriots. 2 of his better games, but he just hasn't done that week in, week out this year.
It's such a weird season for him because every time you watch a game and you look up, like he's making a ridiculous pass, like pinpoint accuracy in tight coverage, or with rush or a blitz in his face, and it's nuts. And then you look at the sort of totality of that, and it's like it's not adding up to amazing performances over the course of an entire game. It's more, and it's not even as good as I don't think it's even as good as Detroit Matthew Stafford as a baseline. It's just there's flashes of it fairly regularly, but not enough.
Some stats behind it. So he's got 13 touchdowns, 7 picks, lowest big-time throw percentage since 2016 for Stafford. Highest turnover-worthy play percentage since 2019 for Stafford. Last year, I was calling him a sneaky MVP candidate because he had the big time throw to turnover worthy play ratio, which you and I like, which is we feel is way better than a touchdown to interception ratio. It's the actual throw that he's making and the actual throw or play that he's making. He was unbelievable big time throw to turnover worthy play ratio, and doing it with rookie Puka Nacua. We didn't know how good Puka was, and we knew pretty quickly, but there's something about elevating the 5th round rookie and turning him into a record-breaking receiver. So Stafford was doing all of that last year and kind of dragging a really young Rams team to the playoffs, and you're just not getting that same level of performance. Last year ended up Stafford's highest PFF grade of his career at 88.2, even higher than the Super Bowl run, which was his previous high. Again, that perspective that, I think Stafford throw for throw was really good last year, and you're just not getting that level of consistency this season.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
And the Eagles defense is playing really well. So that whole matchup on that side of the ball is good. And look, I'm a Stafford fan. Love to watch Stafford. I love to watch him week in, week out. I think any week he's capable of looking like the best quarterback. Been saying that for years. And he could go on a run here for the Rams, and they're going to need it. They're sitting here at 5-5.
Yeah, the other side of the ball is pretty interesting as well, though it does feel to me that it much more favors Philadelphia. I think their offense should have success against the Rams. It will be an interesting test, though, for that Rams defensive line, that young defensive line that's been so good consistently this season. Jared Verse looking amazing, Braden Fisk being good. That group has been impressive. They're going up against one of the best offensive lines in the NFL. Can they still have that kind of impact, or, does this neutralize them?
I wonder if this one looks like if you watched Philadelphia and Washington. It was close. Philadelphia leaned on them in the fourth quarter. I'm a huge Kobe Turner fan, Braden Fisk. I like those defensive tackles. I don't think they anchor well against a team like the Eagles that can lean on them. And a reminder of what Saquon Barkley has done this year.
Is it a body blows game?
It might be. It might be. Even if it's not body, it could happen in the first quarter. I don't trust. Kobe Turner is a disruptor, but he doesn't anchor very well, right? Braden Fisk, those dudes can get moved off the ball. That's what Philly wants to do. And you give Saquon Barkley the slightest crease. I don't trust the Rams linebackers, their run fits.
Right.
I think there's some big plays from the Eagles run game that could be coming out of this.
Yeah.
I'm with you as far as the Eagles' advantage on offense. And then it puts, to me, the pressure on the Rams offense to try to keep
the other side I think is close. I could see either the Rams offense or the Eagles defense winning that matchup. I think that they plausibly are can both hang with the other one. The Eagles offense against the Rams defense, I don't see too many ways that doesn't go in Philadelphia's favor. They just have even if that defensive line can match up and actually do really well against one of the best offensive lines in the NFL, I don't think that their secondary can hold up against that group of receivers. Saquon Barkley is a mismatch if he gets to the second level. It's just there's too many ways where the Eagles offense, I think, is a mismatch.
All right, man, let's make some picks. Or anything else you wanted to add?
No,
on this?
I think we're good.
It's 2.5. Eagles are favored. 48.5 is the over/under. Again, I think Vegas expecting some level of scoring in this one. The Eagles defense, though, averaging about 17 per game allowed. They've been really good. Where are you going to go with this one Sunday?
I'm going to go with the Eagles covering that.
I will as well.
Even on
Harry
the road.
Also taking the Eagles. What?
Even on the road.
Even on the road, yeah. We're all taking the Eagles. Every week, though, I'm like, yeah, they could be a powerhouse, and they kind of slog through games times. But they emphatically finished against Washington. I think
they did.
I think
probably a good time to remind people why we haven't yet gotten to talking about Thursday Night Football.
We've been saving Thursday Night Football toward the end.
Yeah, a lot of people listen to this
our
on
audio listeners
Friday.
They skip it.
Yeah, well, because a lot of people are listening to this on Friday or on Saturday. So by the time they're listening, the game's already happened.
We will get to Pittsburgh, Cleveland later. Weather game tonight. It's going to be great.
Weather game.
Yeah,
it's already snowing. It's snowing outside.
It was snowing outside. Almost didn't come in today.
Well, our inclement weather policy.
We have an inclement weather policy. Mike T, what happens? Do we just cancel the show?
Look, anytime there's any form of precipitation in the air, that makes my journey hazardous in a Camaro.
It does. I'm just glad you're not Renner, who's like one snowflake literally has him afraid from putting wheels to the road.
Well, to be fair, he's been in a fairly significant motor vehicle accident in the snow.
He's gun shy like my former teammate who got struck by lightning twice.
That would make you gun shy.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be going out in a lightning storm if I'd been struck by lightning twice.
Yeah, my old team, he was an outfielder, and if there was lightning
Well,
within the region, he would sprint off the field, be like, "I'm out. See ya. Take me out of the game."
if I'd been struck
And I
by
don't blame
lightning once, I might think, what are the chances of that happening twice?
That's not happening.
Right.
No, don't you have like an electrical charge that attracts it the next time?
Well, if that's true, that's why I would get struck
Then
a
you'd
second
get out of
time.
there.
But the first time in my brain, I might be like, I've already been hit by lightning. What are the chances of that happening twice in one lifetime?
Can somebody check me on that? Is that like a concussion? Once you get one,
Right.
you're more likely to get the second?
But once I'd been hit twice, I think I would then flip that and say, if I've been hit twice, I'm clearly some form of lightning magnet. I'm not doing that again.
On the other hand, how cool is that? 2-time lightning strike survivor.
What's the record, do you think?
Check. Can we get Guinness on the phone? Look for this record here.
You see Joe Burrow's partner with Guinness? He's auctioning off some like harp chain that they've
I'm talking about the Guinness
created.
Book of
They're the same people. I mean, not like directly. It's not like the brewery people are also going, but like it's all
the
one.
beer people make the record book?
I'm pretty sure they're connected.
I mean, how many Guinnesses are there? We're getting off the rails here. 2 games in.
Yeah. Well, we got time, you said. There's bye weeks and stuff. I'm pretty sure Guinness, it's connected. They're not like Guinness World Record. I'm going to have to search this out.
I assumed it was 2 different Guinnesses.
Maybe they are. Maybe I'm just a moron. Wouldn't be the first time.
It's certainly possible. All right, we got brothers facing
Yeah,
each
there
other.
you go. Look, on the 10th of November, 1951, Sir Hugh Beaver, then the managing director of Guinness Breweries, went on blah, blah. Anyway, they are connected. I'm not completely idiotic. Anyway, what were we saying?
And now we need somebody to look up the record for lightning strikes.
Most lightning
survival.
strikes, yeah.
Yes.
We can't do that, but somebody who has time. Let's go.
And then if someone could let me know, if you get struck by lightning once, are you more likely to get struck by lightning a second time? We really have to.
This is why we need Ben Stockwell to be our live fact checker.
our
These
fact
are
checker?
things Ben should be doing.
Ben, do you still watch? I know he does on Mondays. All right, we got a huge game, Monday Night Football. Baltimore Ravens at the Los Angeles Chargers. I don't know if you've heard, Sam, but 2 coaches who happen to be brothers are coaching against each other. It's John Harbaugh and Jim Harbaugh.
No.
A rematch from Super Bowl, whatever it was.
Harbaugh 3.
Yes, the third one.
The third.
What's the history?
Harbaugh 3, the revenge.
What's the history look like?
The history looks like John over Jim twice, including a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
16-6 was the first game, the regular season meeting, and then 34-31 in the Super Bowl, where it came down to that, one big play.
There are going to be people. There are going to be people who are sick of hearing, I don't want to hear about the brothers. I don't want to hear about the brothers coaching against each other in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, there are.
I'm not one of them. I think it's amazing. I think it's incredible. You only have one kid. You can't even picture this. Like, what if I got 4 kids? What if 2 of them were coaching against each other? What if Harry and Teddy were coaching against each other in the Super Bowl?
Yeah.
Bunk beds, roommates. What if it was Benny and Toby coaching against each other in the Super Bowl? It's an amazing story.
I have long thought that, the way there's people without kids tend to think a different way of people with kids.
Hate
kids,
hearing kid stories.
Having kids changes you, right? And it changes, I think, different people in different ways. It kind of ruined horror movies for me for some reason. Because a lot of horror movies feature kids in them and stuff, right? And immediately, as soon as you have a kid, you're like, I can't watch that crap anymore. It turns you into a sap. It turns you into like a Hallmark Channel person.
Yeah. That's me.
Yeah.
Just picture
So everyone, like people without kids are like, I am sick of this Harbaugh bullshit. You are like, I can't get enough of this. This
I'm
is
going to
gold.
be living vicariously through Jack Harbaugh watching his kids coach against each other.
Yeah.
Just the torment of who do you root for? What do you do? You're just rooting for a good game that hopefully is a 3-point game in the Super Bowl.
Just rooting for good. I'm rooting for them both.
Just rooting for them both. NFL hat and everything. And it's 2 good teams, obviously. The Baltimore Ravens sitting there at 7-4, Chargers at 7-3. There's playoff implications here because both teams are in the wild card race right now. Neither team is leading their respective division. I would say the Ravens have a chance to catch the Steelers. I would say the Chargers unlikely to catch the Chiefs. So you're probably talking about playoff seeding here. Could be a playoff rematch. If things fall the right way, of course. It's a really good game.
It is. It is a really good game. Sorry, I'm distracted because both our producer, Ben Allen, and the chat in multiple ways, all of which lead me to assume that they're just Googling it. have declared that Roy Sullivan is the Guinness World Record holder for being struck by lightning the most times and surviving.
7 times.
7 times.
Well, I wonder if, it's been 10 years. I wonder if my teammates caught up.
Sullivan was nicknamed the human lightning rod. Makes sense. Makes sense.
Now, is that like mathematically impossible that that's happened, or is that, is that Tua's concussions, right? We're just more likely here.
Ben Stockwell is also sending me live updates about Guinness. So anyway.
We appreciate the chat also encouraging everybody to smash the like button. Haven't reminded people.
No, it's true. It is a good game. I do believe Harbaugh Bowl 3 will be a good game, like Harbaugh Bowl 1 and 2.
Wait, Constantine in the chat has said to me, if you've been hit by lightning once, you may be slightly more likely to get hit again because of factors related to behavior, location, or lifestyle. So it's not so much,
So you're not
it's not your electrical
charged. Yeah. It's that you just happen to linger in lightning places.
Correct.
Okay.
It's just you're like a storm chaser or something like that, and it's like when you're chasing storms, it could happen.
It's that statistically speaking, the people struck by lightning are more likely to be the people struck by lightning.
Wow. Yeah. So that's what
we're all learning a lot on today's show.
This is why it's a team effort here.
If you get
we're Googling together. We're going to do this together.
We're live Googling. This is good for the video people. I feel like this is lacking if you're listening.
What does the AI say? Can't wait. Lightning is...
yeah, this doesn't feel like great audio.
Lightning does strike twice.
So
all those links were clicked into before. This research has already been done, apparently.
We've been Googling this for the last 10 minutes.
We're all having fun here on the show. Talk about the game, though, Sam.
Yeah. Again, I feel like it is a good game. I'm curious whether, Justin Herbert's been opening it up more in the last few weeks. Been playing really well for the last few weeks. Went off the boil in the game against Cincinnati, but this represents, a new Chargers offense, because passing really is the way to attack Baltimore this season. Their pass game has not been as good. They've been reshuffling. They're banged up. Their pass rush isn't amazing. They can be attacked and exploited.
Yeah, Herbert's been playing really well. I think if you're using PFF and premium stats and whichever way you want to slice and dice the data, look for the last 4, 5, 6 weeks, whatever it is. Herbert's highest graded. He's been the best quarterback in the NFL, and it's coincided with him getting healthier. He was on a real hot streak, as you mentioned, against the Bengals. I thought Cincinnati's defense cracked down really well. He went 6 for 23 during a stretch in that game, but I think Cincinnati deserves credit for that. There were drops in that. Herbert missed some throws, all that. But he's been throwing the ball much better. And you're right, Baltimore, that is the way to attack them. And I think that'll be interesting if they start, pounding their head against the wall, because I think Baltimore's run defense they're still stout, fundamentally sound. They play well up front. I think the Chargers should open it up and try to put some points on the board.
Yeah.
And then you have this dynamic of Lamar Jackson in the Ravens offense against the Ravens defense, the Jesse Minter defense of the Chargers, which is the Mike McDonald style, right? The same style. And when you watch the Chargers, I think they're so good at keeping QBs in the pocket and playing disciplined up front. Now with Lamar versus say a Mahomes or a Jaden Daniels, guys who tend to move out of the pocket more, it's less important, but Lamar's still going to move around. He's still going to have 8 to 10 plays where he's running around and trying to make plays on the run, throwing the ball. And the Chargers are so good at gap exchanges, so stunts, but also just taking linebackers and just sneaking up. This is what the Bills did to Mahomes last week, right? You kind of sneak a spy in there, and as soon as he moves, you attack him. The Chargers are really good at that, so I think they have a chance to keep Lamar in the pocket and make him consistently win. It's how the Steelers did it last week. Make him consistently win with the pocket, take away the underneath stuff, force the deeper throws. I think it's not really a blueprint, I don't think, from Pittsburgh. They just executed it really well, but I think the Chargers have a chance to do the same. Maybe take away the underneath stuff, make him hit tight window throws down the field.
That is a kind of interesting element, right? That Lamar going up against a defense that he should be intimately familiar with, because it's essentially a derivative or a variant of the one that they played in Baltimore and have played for years in Baltimore. He should know, or he should at least be very familiar with how that defense operates based off practicing against it significantly. Does that help, or is that a defense that actually does well against Lamar Jackson? So that, I think, will be a pretty fascinating element of this. That Chargers defensive line against Cincinnati was really good. They Tuli Peloto caused all kinds of problems. Joey Bosa was a factor as well. This was with Khalil Mack on the bench, injured on the sideline. They were really disruptive. So can they do that again against Baltimore? That's a really fascinating side of the ball.
Yeah, Baltimore's pass blocking, I think, given some of their questions coming into this year, has been pretty good. But they've had some games where they've struggled up front. And again, I think the Chargers are good at getting. They were good at getting pressure. They're also good at playing contain as well, right? The thing that we always say, hey, the Jags, awful at this, right? They're letting QBs run around, do whatever they want. The Chargers are a very good controlled pass rush type of team.
Yeah, and really one of the big things from last week against Pittsburgh is that once Lamar Jackson was kind of knocked out of his rhythm, he wasn't able to sort of have the same efficiency or the same accuracy passing the ball as he had the rest of the year, right? It wasn't just the Pittsburgh defense did a really good job. It's that once they had done a number on him, he started missing a bunch of throws. Like there were open throws against Pittsburgh, and Lamar was missing them consistently. Whereas previously this year, like he's been dialed in, he's been hitting all kinds of crazy passes. And to his credit, late in the game, fourth quarter drive and stuff, then he started making some plays and hitting guys. But they knocked him out of his rhythm, and that contributed to the lack of success on offense. Again, is that something that the Chargers can do? Get to him early, disrupt it early. Is that a trend with Lamar, or is that simply a bad day at the office?
And then you have the whole dynamic of the Harbaughs being brothers.
Yeah.
There's also that, which I think will be fun.
Which has really been underreported.
I mean, I don't watch NFL coverage, so I don't know how much it's been talked about this week.
I'm assuming it's come up.
Probably a lot. Yeah. Probably a lot. I'm sure it will on Monday night as well. I'm glad it's in prime time. Good job, schedule makers. Good job, Chargers, living up to the hype for the first time in 12 years. That's been great to have the Chargers actually
being good.
This is like the least hype they've been this year.
It was almost like
other than just having Jim Harbaugh.
Yeah, it was almost the 1 year. Like half the people kind of jumped off and went, okay, they'll be good at some point, but probably not this year.
And then they're like, we're going to get Jim Harbaugh. It's like, I'm back in.
No, but even with Harbaugh, a lot of people sort of backed off the usual hype, which is this year is probably not. Next year they'll be great.
I will say, they said, we're going to build in the trenches first. Yeah, they brought in Ladd McConkey, but like on paper, they shouldn't have great playmakers, but they built from a defense, run game, offensive line standpoint, with Herbert, of course, pulling it all together. It feels like they're ahead of schedule.
Yeah,
and it feels like Jim Harbaugh's put his stamp on this team ahead of schedule, which is impressive.
Yeah, I'm sure. Everything is probably a factor, including the coaching, and Justin Herbert playing out of his mind. But like Ladd McConkey looks really good, the rookie.
He does.
His route running is slick. His speed is fantastic. Like he's a really good player for them. But they're getting production out of Quentin Johnston as well, who looked like an absolute bust up until this point. I think that is more dependent on external factors than McConkey, but it doesn't really matter. It's all working as a dynamic. McConkey's their number one receiver. Quentin Johnston's making plays. Joshua Palmer's making some plays. The run game is strong. Justin Herbert's incredible right now. They have, I think, a higher production level than people were expecting them to have.
All right, I'm looking forward to it. Should be a great game. It's Monday Night Football. Over-under's 50.5. So once again, Vegas expecting some level of scoring here. Where are you going to go?
I'm going to go with the Chargers. I'm buying into that defense, and I think they're quietly rounding into form as a really good team.
I'm going to take Baltimore to cover the 3 on the road here. I think I'm going to continue to believe in Baltimore. 7-4. I think against non-Steelers good teams, they're going to be, put their stamp on this thing. Harry also taking the Ravens to cover the 3 here. We're talking about a lot of games here. If you guys want to get to live games, go check out some of these NFL games, college football games, whatever it is. The best place to do that is with our friends over at Gametime. Download the Gametime app. You got the code Check the Mic, $20 off your first purchase. Gametime Picks, it's incredible. Filters out the fluff to show you only the incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching for thousands of tickets. Curation makes it easier to save more on not just sports, but concerts, comedy, theater, whatever you might be looking for. You get the all-in pricing toggle. You press the button, and the feature shows the total right up front with no surprise fees at checkout. You get a panoramic view of your seat right in the app before you buy it. And Gametime also has a lowest price guarantee, or they will credit you 110% of the difference. Your purchase is also covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Take the guesswork out of buying concert tickets with Gametime. So download the Gametime app, create an account, use code CheckTheMic for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code CheckTheMic, CheckTheMic, for $20 off your first purchase. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Game time. All right, let's go Arizona Cardinals at the Seattle Seahawks. A battle for the top of the NFC West. Cardinals are favored by 1.5 here in Seattle. Over-unders 47.5 per FanDuel. 6-4 Cardinals at the 5-5 Seahawks.
Yeah, this is a fun game. Seattle's defense, their pressure packages, I think have been getting more creative as the season has gone on, as that defense really beds in and everyone gets a kind of intuitive understanding of how it works. Can they mess with Arizona's passing game, or get home with a ton of pressure, or simply is Kyler Murray good enough to just negate that by himself? He's the type of quarterback that can escape pressure, even unblocked pressure, and then make plays, whether it's with his legs or with his arm, buying enough time and then finding a pass. How does that dynamic play? Can that defense shut them down, or is Kyler Murray capable of just offsetting that by himself?
Yeah, Arizona, again, you're starting early in the season, didn't have a ton of faith in them. I think they're playing much better lately. Haven't given up a touchdown at home in their last 3 games.
Yeah.
They kind of defy the odds, right? They're kind of defying what
the
data says. The defense does. The offense
makes more sense.
Has looked really good. They've run the ball extremely well in recent weeks.
Yeah.
Offensive line's been moving people. James Conner running well.
James Conner's so good. I mean, he's leading the league in broken tackles. Like he's averaging 3.5 yards after contact per carry, according to PFF. His grade is really good. Multiple years now of just imposing solid, productive play. He's so difficult to stop. Then you pair him with Kyler Murray. Trey McBride is becoming an absolute star at tight end. Marvin Harrison Jr. is still really talented. Michael Wilson, now that he's number 2. That's a talented group. It should be good. The defense is a lot more questionable on paper, but it's been playing really well as well.
And then Seattle's defense has, they started out great, hit a massive lull where they struggled, had some injuries, but also really struggled, turned everything over at linebacker, right? So now it's Ernest Jones in there, Tyrese Knight, late-round draft pick out of UTEP, who I think they really liked, and he got most of the time next to Ernest Jones last week. We talked a lot about Mike McDonald's defense, and when he was in Baltimore, it took them half a year to figure things out, actually. Even though they started strong this year, that was kind of the trend in Baltimore. And they also traded for Roquan Smith, right? They said, we want to get better at linebacker. So Seattle's had tackling issues. They've had gap control issues. But have they solved it at linebacker? I do think they've been better, or at least a little bit better last week against San Francisco. So that'll be interesting because, on paper, if you look at the totality of the season, it looks like Arizona should have the advantage as far as their run game goes. And then every week I'm going to cite, hey, you don't know when Kyler's going to play special.
Yeah.
Marvin Harrison Jr., Trey McBride, that trio, those are like Arizona's level of the dudes that can take over games. And they've done that a few times this year.
Yeah, they can. I just can't say enough good things, though, about this Arizona defense. On paper, it looks like one of the worst groups in football.
They have the 3rd lowest PFF pass rush grade, middle of the pack coverage grade, middle of the pack run defense grade.
Yeah.
But the sum of the parts ends up playing much better.
Yes, and I think generally, not always, but generally when that is the case, when the production of a unit is vastly different from the sum of the grading of the individuals within the unit, the difference is coaching. And I think this Arizona team on both sides of the ball is extremely well coached. I think that's what it comes down to. Last year, for them to be as good as they were, effectively without Kyler Murray for, let's say, the whole season. I know he came back, but it wasn't full strength, 100% healthy Kyler Murray. It was him coming back off a knee injury. They effectively played without their star quarterback last season and still outperformed everybody's expectations. Still, did well, were creative schematically, and now we're seeing it still persist, it still maintain on both sides of the ball. This is, I think, such an optimistic time for the Cardinals because if they upgrade the personnel a little bit in a few places, they could be really good.
Yeah, I still don't think they have the horses to, say, take advantage of the right side of Seattle's offensive line or some of the attack weaknesses the same way, but they've dialed up blitz pressure at the right time this year and created some havoc. The Dynamic with Seattle, Jackson Smith and Jigba is now leading the Seahawks with 60 catches, with 678 receiving yards. He's the highest PFF graded receiver. So Jackson Smith and Jigba has essentially become their go-to guy, really on the back of these last 2 weeks, his last 2 weeks of play. But it does give Seattle just more options. I still think Tyler Lockett's good and effective, but, pulling him away, elevating JSN with DK, who could still take the top off the defense, I think Seattle's offense is dangerous.
No, definitely it is. I mean, DK Metcalf is still a big play threat. They've got talented players in the backfield. Geno Smith showed last week that you can't forget about him either. He's not exactly a dynamic scrambling quarterback. He's not Lamar Jackson. He's not Kyler Murray. He's not Jaden Daniels. But he's good enough that if you don't factor it in, like if you just forget about it, just play man coverage, he can take off and run for 40 yards and win a game. Like, you need to at least factor him in. So that they've got talent on that side of the ball.
All right, so this one's also in that 4 o'clock window on Sunday. It's at 4:25 with that Packers-Niners game. So a ton of NFC West implications during that window, Sam. Arizona by 1.5 here. This line did flip. I think Seattle was favored earlier in the week. It did flip in Arizona's favor. Where are you going to go with this one?
I will go with the Seahawks.
I'm also going to take the Seahawks at home as home dogs. Harry's going to go with the Cardinals here. He's going to disagree with us
on
this one.
Well, he's got to play contrarian now to get back into it.
He's going to have to start,
running out of weeks.
Trying to catch up against us here. Minnesota Vikings at the Chicago Bears. It's Sunday at 1. Vikings favored by 3.5. They're 8-2. Bears are 4-6. Fought hard last week against the Packers. It was the blocked field goal.
The game they should have won, but didn't.
Coulda, woulda, shoulda won. Caleb Williams looked much better in that game, and I think him going up against Brian Flores' defense, of course, is going to be the big story in this one.
Yeah, that'll be fascinating, particularly because a lot of how they used Caleb Williams last week was taking advantage of his athleticism, both by design and by sort of instruction. Like, I think there were a lot of plays last week where he took off scrambling, where in previous weeks I think he would have, remember that, like literally the week before, he had that play that we talked about where he was like bolted to the spot of his drop and stood there in like a collapsing pocket and just allowed it to collapse in on him, right? Like this week, or last week rather, he's taking that same drop back. If his first read or second read wasn't there, instead of going like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, oh no, the pocket's collapsing, I'm still standing here trying to find the pass, he just took off. I think that's probably like an instruction. Hey, I love your process. I love what you're trying to do here, but dude, you're athletic. Get out there. Make a play.
70-something yards on the ground, right?
Right.
Was the final couple designed, as you mentioned. But yeah, it looked more natural from Caleb Williams last week.
Yeah, and it
was less robotic.
Yes.
And mechanical.
But I think it wasn't an instinctive thing. It was very much, it was, because by its nature, scrambling is fairly instinctive. But it was like, clearly that was an emphasis coaching-wise, right? Of, hey, don't just stand there don't just stand there and let it get to you. You're way too athletic for that. Get out. Go and make a play.
Yeah, I think this game looks a little bit different potentially, though, because the way Minnesota's not going to play man coverage a whole lot. They're going to send the extra rushers. You don't know where they're going to come from. And it's going to be less about finding running lanes and more about finding blitz answers. And we know Minnesota's done a really good job of, say, like what they did against San Francisco earlier this year, is they didn't have any – they had blitz answers, but they were late. They couldn't get to their blitz answers very quickly. That's what the Bears need. So I think this needs to be a quick processing game for Caleb Williams. I took his passing game projection just because passing yard total-wise, the Vikings are giving up the 5th most passing yards per game in the NFL this year, in part because you're always winning. Teams are playing catch-up against them, and they have done a good job stopping the run. That's the other piece about Chicago's offense. Again, they only put up, 19 points last week. Could have been 22 if they kicked a field goal. They had the long run from DeAndre Swift. They've had some of those games where they could break off a couple of those big runs with DeAndre Swift. Minnesota's been outstanding, just taking away running lanes, stacking the box, playing the run this year. If Chicago becomes one-dimensional and don't have any plays from DeAndre Swift, I think it's going to be real tough for them to overcome.
I do think it's not a good matchup schematically for Chicago's offense. Minnesota's defense, in addition to just being good, is particularly good in a couple of specifically key areas that might cause problems. Number one, as he said, run defense, they're capable of forcing them to be one-dimensional. Number two, the blitzing, the crazy looks, the disguise, all those kinds of things that are just generally a nightmare for any quarterback, but in particular a young quarterback who's not exactly lighting it up. And then number three, they're one of the best defenses in football against scrambles. Like they have the third best EPA per play in the NFL against scrambles, on scrambling plays. So what we just saw last week, a big part of Chicago's game was tapping into Caleb Williams' unusual athletic gift and letting him just go be a playmaker. Might not work as well against Minnesota, where they have a lot of athletic players that can spy that'll chase that down.
One other scheduling quirk that I noticed for the Steelers last week, but I didn't notice it for the Bears. The Steelers played their first division game last week. Last week was the Bears' first division game as well. So they have Minnesota this week. They come back against Minnesota in week 15. They have the Lions in week 13 and 16. The Bears are going through the whole gauntlet of the NFC North, which has been the best division in football this year, of course. So they still have to play Minnesota twice, Detroit twice, Packers one more time. They're sitting here at 4-6. This is a tough stretch for the Bears.
It is. It is a rough stretch for them. I mean, it's such a shame in a way that they didn't get the win that last week kind of deserved. Like you'd feel so much better.
I mean, you have that, and you have the Hail Mary against the Commanders.
I don't. But that kind of last week was sort of the symbolic one. It's like we'd identified Shane Waldron as the problem. We threw him under the bus and out of the building, and look, it was fixed. We fixed everything, right? Like everything looked good. The defense, Caleb Williams, the scrambling, everything looked better against a really good team. And then right at the end, a block kick screws them over. And apparently a block kick, I didn't notice this at the time, but they were complaining fairly vociferously that they kind of cheated, right? They basically grabbed the center to get that block, right? Wasn't a particularly tricky, unique play, but it was like, that maybe should have been called a flag. Either way, they didn't get the reward that they should have gotten. And you'd feel so much better about the team if that had been the case. Now it's like if they lose that game and then they lose to Minnesota because it's just a bad matchup, suddenly you're back to feeling really bad about them again. And it's like we almost didn't achieve anything there.
We used to be really good at pulling out these storylines too. The Minnesota Vikings have completed their sweep of the AFC South.
Oh yes, they're AFC South champion. There's another team as well that's a division champion.
That was the Rams a couple years ago. Won the NFC East.
Yeah.
Right? They dominated the NFC East. So the Vikings have won the AFC South.
I think somebody has won the NFC South that isn't from the NFC South. Somebody has a sweep over. It might be Denver. Denver, I think, swept the NFC
Chiefs.
South.
Has the Chiefs played everybody from
No, I think Denver.
Denver
beating Atlanta last week, I think, is what swept the NFC.
Congrats to the Broncos. NFC South champions. Congrats to the Vikings. So they're done with the AFC. They have a bunch of pretty good NFC teams to play down the stretch as well. So Minnesota sitting here at 8-2 in a really good position, and they've got some games against Arizona, Atlanta, a couple division games against Seattle, all playoff caliber teams. So and Sam Darnold coming off of a really good game. Love how he bounced back from the Jags game. So where are you going to go with this one? Vikings by 3.5 here in Chicago.
The other thing, by the way, is Tyreek Stevenson has been getting slowly rotated out of the lineup for Terrell Smith. My pre-draft, my draft take is finally looking like it might be coming good.
The data liked Stevenson, my guy. My data liked Stevenson.
But the eyes, my eyes like
my
Terrell
eyes kind
Smith.
of like Terrell Smith too. The data.
So remember, Tyreek Stevenson was the guy who made the goof on the Hail Mary play where he was taunting the crowd and then managed to tip it to Noah Brown for the touchdown.
I remember that play.
And he got benched subsequently following that, like as a punishment, essentially. This isn't that, though. Like, even after coming back in the lineup, he's been getting rotated out.
He's always been a little up and down.
He has.
He's a year and a half into his career. He's been a little up and down.
Terrell Smith this season has a better coverage grade. He has better coverage numbers and generally appears to be outperforming him. So that looks like it might be a thing. By the way, the other thing in this game, Jalen Johnson versus Justin Jefferson.
Always
JJ
awesome
versus
matchup.
JJ. Jalen Johnson's numbers now for like 2 straight years have been pretty insane. He's given up a passer rating of 57 into his coverage. 54.5% of the passes thrown his way have been caught. That's ticked up in recent weeks, but that's still a fantastic matchup. Anyway, bottom line, I'm going Chicago to cover.
Ooh.
Even though I hate that now that I've talked out the game.
Yeah, now that I've talked it out, I'm going to go Minnesota. Harry's also going to take Minnesota. I don't love it as road favorites for Minnesota, especially Chicago hung tough. Should have won that game against Green Bay if you're a Bears fan. But I'll still take the Vikings this week. Detroit Lions at the Indianapolis Colts Sunday at 1. Lions favored by 7.5. The freshly crowned favorites in the betting markets to win the Super Bowl. The Lions. Again, favored by 7.5 here. Over-unders 50.5 per FanDuel. Colts coming off of their nice win against the Jets and Anthony Richardson's return.
Yeah, and we said it like this was almost the first game that Anthony Richardson has played where he's just looked like a normal quarterback from the box score. Like not this wild, okay, it was productive, but only on like 30% completion rate or whatever. Just a standard very good game for Richardson. Can he do that 2 times in a row? Can we get another really good game or even just standard good game where it looks normal, there's a couple of big plays in there or whatever? Can he back that up with another performance that looks like that? Because the Lions are, they've now become not just Super Bowl favorites, but they're now being like roundly described as just the best team in football right now, comfortably by everybody. They're saying this is easily the best team in the NFL. And they've been doing that. I mean, Renner pointed out this morning on Twitter, like half their defense has been missing at various points. They've done that with a lot of injuries, particularly, on that side of the ball specifically. But it's not like they've led this charmed existence where everything's gone perfectly for them. They've survived in a way that other teams haven't. They've been banged up as well, and they've still been annihilating teams.
They've just built such incredible depth. Remember when we were there at training camp 2 years ago before the 23 season, and we were like, man, there's a 4-person rotation at linebacker. Like there's a 4-man. The Lions have a 4-man rotation at linebacker for 2 spots with Alex Anzalone and Jack Campbell and Malcolm Rodriguez, and so when they've just built such incredible depth, and that's through picking up DJ Reader and picking up Kevin Zeitler, but also now the 2 highest graded safeties in the NFL, Kirby Joseph, Brian Branch, and the way they've played in their respective roles, which are different. Kirby Joseph, 7 interceptions this year, always finding the ball. Like other dudes are stepping up. They pick up Carlton Davis this offseason to solve the cornerback spot while also drafting 2, right? I mean, they just have built incredible depth up and down that roster.
Yeah.
And as always, if you're a Lions fan watching this one-off video, which I know you tend to do, go subscribe to Check the Mic. Go check us out every single week.
Obviously, Alex Anzalone breaking his arm is a blow, but they're well stocked to replace that with that linebacker
position.
depth.
They've got Malcolm Rodriguez to come in and
Zadarius Smith came in last week, looked like he'll be probably their best pass rusher until they get Aiden Hutchinson back, if that happens, for a playoff run. Alim McNeil, in particular, in this game, I think will be really interesting going up against that Colts interior offensive line, which has been a little bit banged up, is not the group necessarily that they would want to have. It's that's the interesting side of the ball, I think. Can they cause Anthony Richardson to have a bad game and really get after them?
Richardson coming off of his second outdoor game of his career, who's outstanding. His best game was an outdoor game back in a dome. Richardson was so good against man and zone last week, but he was making some tight window throws against man coverage.
It was just a genuinely, across the board, very good game from him.
It was. The Lions are going to play a lot of man, and when you play man, you have tighter windows, right? That's what it is. If you're getting separation with your receivers, it's usually a step, and you got to put it in a good spot, or else the pass gets broken up. So I think it's one of those tests for Richardson's accuracy, again, which I thought was outstanding last week against the Jets outside of a couple throws. So I think for every single week, for the Lions to lose, I kind of view this the same way. How can a team upset the Chiefs? I like to view the games through that lens. How can a team upset the Lions? And I keep coming back to Goff turning the ball over. They still survived that against the Texans.
Right.
Or Richardson playing a similar game. They put up 28 points against a Jets defense that's not as good as it's been in the past. But again, I think they did make things difficult for him at times last week. But he still made the plays. If he can make those special plays again, maybe they have a chance to keep it close.
I mean, look, the whole point of Anthony Richardson as a concept is that he is uniquely athletically gifted and he can neutralize whatever you do on defense. I mean, we saw that against the Jets. There were multiple plays where Richardson just broke tackles and busted his way to the end zone. Like, he can do that against anybody. I mean, there going to be a play where on defense, your guy, your head coaching candidate, dials it up, right? You've got him neutralized. You've got a linebacker in the open field. He's got him dead to rights. And then Rich just stiff arms him to the ground and scores anyway. Like, okay, there's nothing I can do to fix that, right? He's just, you got out-athleted by Richardson. Similarly, earlier, he still owns the greatest throw of anybody this season, right? Off his back foot, 65 yards in the air into a bucket to Alec Pierce for a touchdown. I mean, if he does that, there's literally nothing you can do about it. It's the cheat code. I neutralize anything you call on defense. So that's how the Colts can potentially do this. Is Richardson needs to have, like, the baseline needs to be high. That was the real thing about last week, is the baseline was way higher than it normally is. So the baseline needs to be high just so the offense moves the ball and is generally productive. And then he needs a few plays like that where he just decides, I'm a better athlete or player than you are capable of being on defense, and that's the difference. Now, that then brings back to what can the Colts defense do against this juggernaut of a Lions offense.
And I think it's going to be tough. I mean, every single week.
For anybody.
Right.
I mean,
it's David Montgomery. It's Jahmyr Gibbs out of the backfield. Jamison Williams, we've seen his big plays over the last couple weeks. There's just too many weapons, too many options. Amon-Ra St. Brown, outstanding out of the slot. He's uncoverable. And again, I come back to, as long as Goff's not forcing the ball and taking care of business, and he's had so many of those games where he's had 5 games completing 80+% of his passes, where you just have that rhythm in the offense. Like, that's when the Lions are unstoppable.
I mean, just too many ways to win. Like, they've got too many ways to win, and it's coupled with a really good coach and scheme.
And that's the last thing. They're 9-1. I almost gave them the 10th win. They're 9-1 because other than the Bucs game, the Bucs was that weird game where they kept getting stopped in the red zone and they kind of beat themselves. They don't have many of those games. And that's what's been most impressive about the Lions. They had a couple of those games last year. The Ravens, killed them in the middle of the season. Yeah. They haven't had too many duds under Dan Campbell this year.
The adjusted score probably gave them that game. You can call them undefeated.
The adjusted score had them beating the Bucs. Maybe they had them losing to the Texans, though.
That's true, yeah.
All right, 7.5.
I'm going with the Lions. I mean, they look like I agree. They look like the best team in the NFL.
I'll also take the Lions. I'll tell you, if Anthony Richardson has a big game, though, the hype for him against this
but I think he needs
Super Bowl favorites.
Yes, but I think he needs a big game just to keep it close. I mean,
I agree.
Like, if he has anything like his regular game, this could be I don't know.
They hit a lull in the middle too, where they were behind the chains. They have to play.
Like, I don't know how they
game.
I don't know how they keep it to within double digits if he doesn't have a great game.
You and I are taking the Lions. Harry will also take the Lions. That's Harry, my son. But I'm going to tell you about Harry's razors here in pro sports. Even a little edge could be the winning advantage. And in shaving, Harry's gives you the sharpest edge with their razors. Fresh Harry shave this morning.
Yeah.
It's perfect timing.
Nice.
For us to have Harry's, so we can accentuate our wonderful facial hair.
Craft, indeed.
They've got the German-engineered blades made in their own factory that stay sharp longer. They got customizable delivery options for scheduled refills for as low as $2, half what you pay from the other big brands. You can get a 5-blade razor, weighted handle, foaming shave gel, which is exactly what saved my face today. That shave gel is outstanding. And a travel cover. It's just $3 over at harrys.com/checkthemic. They get body wash, all sorts of fun stuff over there as well. So they've got the highest customer satisfaction in the shaving industry. No risk trial. If you don't like your shave, there's no worries. It's all on Harry's, and convenient subscription options that you can cancel at any time. So get the edge on your shave with Harry's. Get started with a $13 trial set for just $3. That's it. $3 on a $13 trial set. It's all at harrys.com/checkthemic. That's harrys.com/checkthemic for a $3 trial set. Tampa Bay Bucks at the New York Giants. The Bucks are favored by 5.5. It's Baker and Cutlets. In the Moxie Bowl. Sunday at 1 in the Meadowlands.
Moxie in the Meadowlands.
The Moxie in the Meadowlands.
Yeah.
Nah, that's it. That's good. Moxie Bowl in the Meadowlands. It's happening this week. Bucks are 4-6. They're in an intriguing spot here because I kept saying I was calling the NFC South race almost done.
Yeah.
The Falcons swept the Bucks. The Falcons were a few games up, but Atlanta's lost a couple games here. Mm-hmm. And even though the Bucks are coming off 4 straight losses, they came against the Ravens, Falcons, Chiefs, and 49ers.
And they were close in a few.
And they were all close games. In Tampa Bay now, the next 3 weeks, Giants, Panthers, and Raiders. Teams that have combined for 7 wins off the top of my head. So the Bucks have an opportunity to get back in the NFC South race. They're favored by almost a score here, almost a touchdown. Huge opportunity for the Bucks.
Yeah, it is.
Coming off a bye.
Right. They're getting Mike Evans back. Is that true? Is that happening?
More
Confirmed?
likely than not.
Okay.
He also needs a ridiculous amount of yards, like a strong finish to get to that.
Oh, the 1,000.
To get to his 1,000.
Missed time. Man, that would be standard, I guess, way, but a really annoying way for that streak to break. He just gets hurt for a few weeks and can't overcome.
Intern Anthony actually added an even better note than what I just described. The Bucks with the second easiest remaining strength of schedule, only one more team above 500, and that's against the Chargers.
There you go.
So they've got an opportunity here to go on a bit of a run.
They do. The only thing, really, they can derail that. I mean, Cutlets, I guess. But it's Dexter Lawrence. Like Dexter Lawrence going up against that offensive line. Wreckage.
I thought you were going Cutlets.
No, that's what I said.
I thought you were setting up.
That's what I said. Cutlets, I guess. But then, no, it really,
okay,
really
sorry,
it's Dexter Lawrence.
I missed that part. Sorry.
Yeah.
The more we talk about Tommy, I just want Val's Cutlets. That's my mom. I want Mom, will you make me some chicken cutlets when I come home, please? It's making me hungry.
So it feels like something that you should be able to cover off air, not on the show.
No, we probably talk more through we don't talk enough. I mean, we talk through the show.
Okay.
Ma, will you make me some cutlets?
All right.
So you think Dexter Lawrence blowing up? We have it's a Dexter Lawrence versus Vita Vea matchup.
Yeah. The Vita Vea versus the player that he should be. Really. So, I mean, the interior of that Bucs offensive line, it's not amazing. Dexter Lawrence is amazing. Therefore, that could be a problem. Like the Giants, remember the Giants defense, like one of the worst in the NFL last year. It's a lot better this year. It's not as bad as you sort of, at least it's not as bad as I tend to imagine it in my brain. And like, this is not an easy defense for Tampa Bay to be carving up, particularly if they don't get a healthy Mike Evans. Or remember he got injured because he gave it a go on a bandy hamstring the last time and snapped it like completely. When they say, I might come back, is he good to go, or we're going to test it again?
Hamstring injuries are, oh, man.
Right.
You don't want to push it. And
exactly.
I don't think they will.
But they already have. Like, that's the thing.
I don't think they will again.
I know. So it's like now, but anytime, like whatever his return is, I'm going to be watching, is he actually 100%, or is this just where he thinks he can give it a go on? And that last time that went spectacularly badly for them.
Yeah, I'm interested in the other. The Giants, basically, really quick. The Giants have had a weird season where I don't think they've been in a lot of games.
Yeah.
They've lost to the great Washington Commanders by a total of 8 points. Right, we're talking about the Commanders as this transcendent, most improved team in the league, and they're 7-4 and everything. The Giants have combined 8 points. 1-score losses to the Browns. They beat the Browns, but 1-score loss to the Cowboys. 1-score loss. Basically to the Steelers. 1-score loss to the Panthers. Are the Giants actually a little bit better than we expected? It's like the inverse of 2022. Maybe they're slightly better. Because you're right. Like the defense has been a little bit better. The offensive line's been a little bit better. They've unlocked some younger players. The one other dynamic here is it felt like when Tommy DeVito did take over last year, they called better plays. Like you know what I mean? Like they were doing the yoink play, the Y sneak throwback was open. It was almost like the coaches said, okay, we need to do a little better job scheming it up. And if they do that again, even if it's just a 1 or 2 game sample, it might be an advantage to that too. Just this idea of like, hey, we have QB3 essentially that we're putting out there. We gotta dial some stuff up.
I mean, I think they've been doing that. See, this is why I think Hey, look, Daniel Jones has not been benched for football reasons. Daniel Jones has been benched because they don't want to guarantee. They don't want to risk.
That is not what the Giants said.
I believe that the Giants are lying. I believe their pants are on fire, and they are liars. I believe that they have benched Daniel Jones because if he gets hurt, and remember, we have so far this season described his play style as the self-preservation instincts of a crash test dummy, right? So he will get hurt. So if Daniel Jones gets hurt and can't pass a physical, they guarantee him an extra like $30-something million, which they don't want to do for a quarterback that they don't believe will start for them in the future. I believe they are benching him for financial reasons, not for football reasons. If, however, you were looking for a football reason to bench Daniel Jones, the best one, in my opinion, is he simply will not pull the trigger on some things that are open and schemed up and there, right? The most obvious example was that flea flicker where everything was open, and instead he just like paralyzed himself with indecision and stood there until he got sacked. It's like that play, Cutlets is just going to let it loose, right? And maybe he'll miss it, but he'll at least take the shot. So that's the kind of play where I think if you're coming out of this week and being, wow, look at the stuff they dialed up for Cutlets, the play calling was better. But they were calling those things. It's just Jones didn't take advantage of them.
Can I add some color to that?
Sure.
I know you've cited this before. Ready? Daniel Jones' big-time throws historically, right? As a rookie, he had 20 big-time throws.
Right.
His second year, he had 24. That was 2020. Do you know how many big-time throws he has since the year that he had 24 in 2020? So since he had 24 in a season, he's played parts of 4 seasons, had some injuries. How many big-time throws?
16.
26. So he's had 26 in 4 years after having 24 in a season.
And not all of that. I mean, you know, when I raised this at some point before, and people are like, oh, his arm injury or shoulder injury, whatever, he doesn't have the same velocity. So many of those, like the lack of those big-time throws is the throws he's not even attempting anymore. That's the problem more than lack of arm strength, lack of, accuracy. It's the flea flicker play. It's like there's a big-time throw to be had on the table there, and you didn't even put the ball in the air. You just hesitated in the pocket until it collapsed and you got sacked. That is that's the damage that Daniel Jones has as a quarterback now. It's that he's not taking the shot anymore, and that's the bigger problem.
What other matchup I just want to highlight really quick? Left tackle for Tampa Bay, Tristan Wirfs, out. Is he out?
Yeah.
I mean, he's been banged up. Brian Burns. I mean, Wirfs has been unbelievably durable, and good.
He's only given up like 6 pressures or something this year.
He's been outstanding. Justin School is the backup. I think Brian Burns could have success in that game.
Yeah.
In this matchup.
What is the official? Just not even like statistical, but like what are we going to get from Cutlets?
You want like a?
I mean, are we going to get good, bad, indifferent? How we're going to land on this?
I think he's going to be good. I think it's going to be 17 of 28 for $180. Solid.
Okay.
Touchdown, no picks. They're going to scheme it up for him.
Right. One player we should probably shout out at some point, and just because, so I pulled out the numbers of pass rush win rate this year for pass rushes, essentially, not just edge rushers. Aiden Hutchinson was at like 38% or something when he went down, which is that's like 18% higher than a good number. It's utterly ridiculous. The highest guy, and then the rest of the list for the top 5 is like all the usual suspects. Myles Garrett is I think at 26, something like that. Then, Nick Bosa's in there. I forget what the exact, but it's all the usual guys, except Yaya Diaby is up there at like 4th or something. Now, his pass rush grade isn't as good as these other guys, so it's not all clean, quick, early wins, but he's been a disruptive player.
6 sacks as a rookie. He was getting some hype as a rookie.
Yeah.
I mean, Joe Tryon-Shoyinka had never really developed into a really good edge rusher there. I mean, Yaya Diaby's been their best.
Yeah, I mean, he's been good for them. Like, he's not been like, his grade isn't, all pro level good, but it's good. I mean, he's generated significant pressure for them. 38 total pressures this season on just 257 pass rushing snaps, according to PFF. he's been a disruptive defensive lineman for them.
I think they're slinging cutlets in the parking lot again. The family. The cutlet business.
Definitely.
Is coming back.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Oh, look at this. It's my people.
There you go.
We can make another
bunch.
plea to the Italian-American Hall of Fame here.
That's what I'm saying. Just a bunch of Italian-American Hall of Famers.
Just saying, if those guys, if Sean and Tommy, if those guys are in, why can't I be in?
The self-confidence required to rock that suit unironically on a sideline with national television cameras pointing at you.
Don't be negative towards
I'm not.
He could be a
That's
future
a positive
guest.
thing.
He could be a future guest.
I couldn't do that. I feel self-confidence or what's the word I'm looking for? Self-conscious. There you go. I feel self-conscious just having a mustache. He's busy, with that suit and the hat.
That's how you sell books, like Sean. All right, let's make some picks.
Yeah.
Bucks by 5.5.
The Bucks. The Bucks will cover.
You're
buying it to cut.
Giants.
It's
for the people.
Yeah.
For our people.
You're culturally required to pick cutlets.
My dad's going to be excited. I'm sure they're going to show it locally in New England. in East Boston where the Italians
anywhere
grew up,
with an Italian population, this is the game we're watching.
Just in East Boston where the Italians grew up. That's it. Give me the Giants. Tampa Bay for Harry, though. Harry not appreciating the culture.
No.
Well, because Kelly watered down his
he's only half, yeah.
He's not even. I mean, it's just a whole. I get Portuguese in me, too, so it's like.
Okay.
She's got like 20 different things. Cowboys and the Commanders. Commanders are favored by 10.5. This is wild.
Yeah.
If you said this just 3 months ago, if you said this to me. Commanders by 10.5 here. Over-under is 44.5. It's Sunday at 1, 7-4 Commanders, and the 3-7 Dallas Cowboys.
New challenge for Washington this week. Can they bounce back from a legitimate setback? I mean, I think that Philadelphia game was the first game this season where they genuinely came out looking significantly worse than they went in, right? Even the losses before that, I think they'd come out of those losses with credit, where they'd outperformed expectation or they'd looked resilient, they'd hung tough, it was closer. This one, though, they let get away from them, and they really looked like they were just a worse team than Philadelphia down the stretch. So can they bounce back from that and, impose themselves again, look impressive? The other interesting element to this is, does Dallas play better now without the pressure of Jerry World and being home? All three of their wins this season have come on the road.
Don't have to worry about curtains. Don't have to worry about anything.
Don't have to worry about getting blinded by the sun. Their record, like all those numbers that people are pulling out at the end of that game, they're all home streaks. Like record 20-plus point deficit at home. Like they've been beat down.
It's because they're given tours at home.
In their own building.
It's the tours.
But I honestly wonder, I think generally the kind of wishy-washy feels stuff is a little bit overblown, but I think it's true with Dallas. Like this pressure thing, the playoff stuff, right? When they get to the playoffs, they are battling not just against whoever, the Green Bay Packers, but against 20 years of history and the pressure that comes with that. Now I think they're doing the same thing in home games. Like the entire crowd in Jerry World is waiting for this to turn sour and getting on them immediately as soon as it happens. They don't have to deal with that on the road. They're just going and playing a game.
Maybe. It doesn't make any sense because Dallas used to be so good at home. They used to, as in the last 4 years,
right.
The last 3 years, demoralize people at home.
But now they're ass.
How much of that? I mean, we like to do a lot of A/B. Football's a lot of A/B analysis, right? You have wit out, a lot of wit out analysis. They are without Commanders head coach Dan Quinn.
Yep.
And for a couple of years, we said normal analysis is you can't always force this many turnovers. You can't just preach turnovers as a coach and make it work. Everybody preaches turnovers. Dan Quinn seemed to get away with it, right? Dallas they were turnover machines on the defense over the last 3 years, and Dan Quinn did an outstanding job of playing to players' strengths, like unleashing Micah Parsons and rushing the passer and, again, forcing a lot of negative plays from offenses. Is Dan Quinn just a much bigger loss than we had thought coming into the year? Because obviously now he's with Washington and helping to turn that around.
I mean, I think clearly we're seeing the power of Dan Quinn just as a coach. I mean, we gave him a lot of credit in Dallas for putting those players in the best position to succeed and minimizing weaknesses, playing to strengths. I think he's doing the same thing in Washington with a probably less talented group on paper. And that defense is coming together. I mean, the offense has been good from day one with Jaden Daniels in there. The defense, I think, though, is meeting it now. It's starting to pick up, again, other than the fact that they, in the second half, just got run over by Philadelphia.
The one other aspect in this, too, is Cliff Kingsbury's second half watch.
Started.
Just a watch. Now, the confounding variable there is the Jaden Daniels rib injury, which took place back in week 7.
And is an almost immediate, he's not been as good since that point.
Yeah. And so this reminds me a little bit of the year Cam Newton was playing really well and then got hurt, and then but his play regressed into every other year of Cam Newton minus his MVP season. And people were like, oh, it's because it was, he got hurt. And that's like, well, he kind of regressed right back into what he always has been. We don't have a previous NFL baseline for Jaden Daniels. He looked like a superstar the first 6 or 7 games and hasn't in recent weeks. Still been fine.
Yeah.
Still been pretty good. But how much has the injury been that? How much of that is natural regression? How much of that is Kingsbury's offense? I think all of those stories are interesting to just keep an eye on here.
Washington, of course, coming off the mini bye because they played on Thursday night.
And they have an actual bye in a couple weeks. An interesting schedule here for Washington.
Yeah.
As far as rest.
So one thing I think, I said before, I think the whole McLaurin getting eliminated by Quinyon Mitchell thing was overblown. But here's one area where I think there is potential criticism or problem with the Kingsbury offense. Like, it's been really good this year. It still, however, does that thing of the receivers line up in the same spot every single play, more or less, and that's where they play, right? And I don't think this was the case, but if Quinyon Mitchell was simply eliminating Terry McLaurin from the game, move him around, get him away from him, move him somewhere else. And he played 30-something passing plays against Philadelphia, and all but 6 of them were at left wide receiver. Like, they basically didn't move him around.
I think we just need we probably need to stop asking Cliff Kingsbury to do something I'm
not asking him to do it, but I'm saying this is a potential problem.
He's never done it. I don't think he's going to do it.
No, but what I'm saying is this is where it becomes an issue, right? If you find a team, a defense that's able to come up with a way of taking away Terry McLaurin, whether it's by one-on-one, like whether it's by revising him out of the game, whether it's by rolling coverage his way, whether it's by simply playing defenses that don't match the routes you're running from that left wide receiver spot, he doesn't have a counter. He doesn't have another way of, well, okay, I'll just go to something else, get him back in the game. If a defense wants to, they can take Terry McLaurin out of the game and force Washington to go somewhere else with it. And that is a potential problem because McLaurin is one of your best players on offense.
Yeah, and so De'Ami Brown's hands issues and different things like those have been issues.
Yeah, I mean, it is essentially allowing...
when you're trying to go somewhere else.
It's Kingsbury's system and that refusal to adjust that part of it, that aspect of it, is inviting defenses to take away your best player in a way that's not possible in different systems, is all I'm saying with that.
Yeah, again, it's something to keep an eye on. I also think in this particular game, Washington's run game, man, they're going to run. They have a chance to run all over Dallas.
Brian Robinson, Austin Eckler, let's go.
Yeah, and Jaden if they wanted to.
Yeah.
10.5, though. Can they dominate at that level?
I believe they can.
The one last thing,
I am concerned that the on-the-road thing is real. I
think Cooper Rush did have elements in 22 where it's like, I've got a pretty good team and overall spread the ball around, made some but none of that's here. It's been bad.
Are you saying that the mighty and great Skip Bayless was incorrect when he was suggesting that they might be better with him?
A big data guy, big sample size guy. It's still early. Maybe not enough information on Cooper Rush yet.
Yeah.
But I'm going to say so far probably not as good as Dak Prescott.
A couple of pieces of information that we do have, though, are 4.8 yards per attempt, 2 big-time throws to 6 turnover-worthy plays, and PFF grade of 43. Those are not good data points.
Even that 43 is a lower baseline than his 50s that he's put out every other year of his career. But
this came
Jimmy
up.
Washington.
This came up several times during that game, and Ben Stockwell asked me this after the game as well. How bad must Trey Lance be?
Yeah, I mean, as bad as what we've seen during the preseason and the little regular
pretty
season
much every time he stepped on the field.
I mean, we're probably one bad game this week away from maybe a little Trey Lance versus Cutlets in
Maybe,
the 4 o'clock window on Thanksgiving.
Man, what a treat that would be. However, they didn't even put him in at the end of the last game, like while it was deep into the beatdown.
Well, Cooper needed more reps. He needed to drop back 60 times.
Yeah.
In prime time.
I mean, did he get on right at the end?
Oh, we got to go.
No, he didn't even get on right at the end.
I'm taking Washington. You're taking Washington. Harry's taking Washington. We got more games to talk about here, Sam.
It's all Washington.
We got more. New England Patriots at the Miami Dolphins. Dolphins favored by 7.5 here. They're 4-6. Patriots are 3-8. But Dolphins have a chance to go on a run here, averaging. Shout out intern Anthony again, pulling out some data points here. We've talked about Miami. Maybe they have a chance to go on a run, right? That 7 seed.
Yep.
Potential there. Since Tua's return, Miami's averaging 28 points per game, and they have the 4th easiest remaining schedule. So if they are going to do some damage here, the Dolphins, this is one of those games as 7.5-point favorites they have to take advantage of. They got New England this week, Packers, Jets, Texans, and 49ers the next few weeks.
Yeah, I mean, I think a couple of those teams could actually go on a run. Denver might make it moot. I mean, they might just wrap up that 7th
They
seed.
might. I agree.
And it might not be available for them.
I'm just saying, thinking about Miami as not a 4-6 team, but
Agreed.
maybe the team that like a 10-win team that they were last year, as we analyze them, is probably fair.
Did you see? I forget where I saw the report, but that Marcus Jones texted Alex Van Pelt and was like, "Hey, could I get into the offense?"
He had at least a snap.
They gave him a couple of snaps. His first couple of snaps on offense of the season, one of which was a carry. They gave him the ball, gave him 5 yards.
Do more of it.
Yeah, so the Patriots are getting him involved because, I mean, why not? It's not like they have an overwhelming volume of weaponry on the offensive side. It's been Drake May raising the level of everybody. I'm all for that. Marcus Jones is dynamic.
I absolutely am as well. Marcus Jones, we saw him on the field 2 years ago in 2022, I think during like the Bailey Zappi games.
Yeah.
They're throwing him swing passes and screens and everything. It's like, wow, he looks like the most dynamic player on the field. I mean, it's him and DeMario Douglas have not been the most consistent. DeMario Douglas has been pretty consistent. But yeah, New England doesn't have a ton of firepower on the offensive side of the ball.
This might be a Chop Robinson breakout game in a real way. Like he's kind of in the middle of it already. He's had 12 pressures over the last 2 weeks, 18 pressures over the last month, and he's now going up against New England's offensive line. Chop Robinson could have a day.
Yeah, and like I said, if you're watching New England's offense now versus earlier in the season, you might think that the offensive line's playing a little bit better, just because again Drake May is generally making it look better. He's taking fewer sacks relative to pressure. And he's just getting rid of the ball quicker and on time and maneuvering the pocket a little bit better. He's scrambling and picking up over 40 yards per game on the ground. It's been fun to watch May, even in a bad situation. It still feels like New England's offense is like 2 years away from how they're going to get it rectified. But he's certainly been pretty impressive. And I thought the Rams game was mostly good. There's a fumble in the pocket, a miscommunication, interception to end it, which I do think was on May. Right. Even though it was a miscommunication.
Which was questioned by some people.
Yes. Douglas is running to the post. He throws it behind him and straight to the safety. I don't know what other route Douglas would be running. I also think it could have been an overthrow relative to Douglas's height. So it doesn't matter. I mean, I'm just saying there's a couple mistakes in there every single week, but it's far more positive than negative for Drake May.
Yeah.
So that makes me think New England can at least hang in against Miami. But Miami's offense, I think, is – Tua and the Dolphins have played really well against New England the last couple of years, even when Belichick was there and everything, and I think they'll have success on offense.
Yeah. No, I think as well. Like Miami's offense, I think will have success. They've got playmakers. They've done well. This is a good offense to attack that New England's defense with. I think they're going to have success. So again, unfortunately, it all rests on Drake May's shoulders. I do think he's been really good. But I think Chop Robinson could have a day. Jalen Ramsey has quietly had like his best season in a while. Like he's been really good on the back end.
I was just about to say, he's number 1 in PFF WAR. I mean, he's been good.
He's been really good. So it sort of feels like Miami's defense just has too many good players to like Drake May really needs to play like Superman in this game for them to have any shot.
Sounds about right. Devin Achane too, as we mentioned on the Monday show, running the ball very well in recent weeks. I think you're just starting to see the playmakers from Miami start to come together, whether it's the run game or Tyreek Hill, the pass game, and Tua playing really well since coming back.
Yeah.
Spreading the ball around. 7.5 here.
I'm going to go with New England to keep it within that. I think Miami wins, but I think the Patriots cover.
I'm going to say the same. New England to keep it close, and Miami for Harry. Harry's going to take Miami to cover the 7.5 here. It's November. Great time. Did you want to give thanks here today? I threw you out on the spot here. Great month for gratitude here in November.
I am grateful that I am capable of growing a better mustache than Wade Boggs.
That's debatable, but I'll give it to you. It's sometimes hard to remind ourselves that we're trying to do our best to make sense of everything, and in this crazy world, not always easy, but we're thankful this month here during November. So we're talking about our friends over at BetterHelp. If you're thinking about starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire, get matched with a licensed therapist, and you can switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. So let the gratitude flow with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/check the mic today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/check the mic. 10% off your first month. So November, thankfulness, but also a great way for people to, our listeners, to get help that maybe they've been looking to get, and to do it on your own terms. I think that's the biggest thing.
Yeah, it really is. Like, I can't say enough about this, that, it's an area that has still got a stigma attached to it, and it really shouldn't. And the easier it is to get over that entry-level hurdle and just get moving on it, the better. And the fact that you don't have to go out, you don't have to, look up places, leave your house and do the whole thing online. And it's insanely convenient and just such a helpful way of accessing the help that a lot of people do need.
All right, man, let's go Denver Broncos at the Las Vegas Raiders. Broncos favored by 6.5 here, Sunday at 4:05. 6-5 Broncos at the 2-8 Raiders.
Over the last month, Bo Nix has a top 10 PFF grade.
Oh, boy.
He has 9 touchdowns, 1 interception, 7.7 yards per attempt. Bo's been cooking. Bo knows.
He has been. And, we talked about it a bit on Monday. It was one of the first times I felt like Sean Payton looked like a great play caller again in that combination. I think all of the reason why you hire Sean Payton in Denver is to elevate quarterbacks.
Yeah. I mean, you're not allowed to do this anymore, right? But we, on this show, we like to reclaim the comparison. Remember, like, for a long time, Drew Brees was criticized for dink and dunk, right? Where's the deep ball? It's all dink and dunk. It's all like, that was the criticism of that offense. This is looking a lot like that, where it's not like the deep ball isn't there. I mean, there was a really nice play last week where he rips the seam, hits a guy over the middle, intermediate level. But it's primarily a short passing, high accuracy, high volume offense that has occasional deep shots in there. It's looking like what people expected it to look when they were pairing Bo Nix with Sean Payton pre-draft, right? This is his, like, Bo Nix is the guy that's the most like Drew Brees stylistically of any of these quarterbacks. It makes a ton of sense for him to be paired with Sean Payton. And then, like, the first month of the season happened, we're like, wow, this doesn't look anything like we were expecting it to. All of a sudden, it's starting to look like we thought it would.
It is. I mean, that is how Bo Nix played at Oregon, right? A lot of underneath stuff, the occasional deep ball here and there. I think it's starting to come together for Denver, the way they're playing. Run game, I think, has shown signs of life as well. The offensive line has been sneaky good, and then Denver's defense has been outstanding. Who were we? Oh, we were talking about yesterday with Charles Davis on the show yesterday. If you haven't seen our discussion with Charles Davis, I thought it was really good. I brought up the point. I said, okay, how's Denver doing it? Because the names on defense aren't there, but Vance Joseph, man, getting them playing really well. We talk about this every week, the number of players that they have that can get pressure. Nick Benito coming off of a huge week. You got Zach Allen. You got Jonathan Cooper. You have a lot of different players who are good, solid players. They scheme it up really well, and they just have been making life difficult on opposing offenses. And the offense in Vegas has not been good.
No, it's not.
Particularly the run game.
Except Brock Bowers.
Yeah, Brock Bowers.
Who's genuinely fantastic.
Every week we can talk about Brock Bowers.
Yeah, so Brock Bowers is great. The Raiders basically have one really good player on either side of the ball. Brock Bowers looks fantastic and it looked earlier in the season like Jaden Daniels was just runaway rookie of the year, the end, right? All of a sudden, like Bo Nix is entering the conversation, the better he plays. And guys like Brock Bowers, I mean, he's putting together a historical season at tight end, which has to put him in that conversation. So it's becoming a much more open race than it looked. Bowers is incredible. I love watching him play any week, regardless of the quarterback. The other one, though, on the defensive side, obviously, is Max Crosby, who's been like all-pro level the last few seasons. Not really this year. Max Crosby hasn't been making the kind of impact that he has made previously. He's got 1 sack in the last month. You've got to go all the way back to week 6 for his last really good PFF pass rushing grade. This defense really only played it above itself when Max Crosby is like defensive player of the year caliber, which happened for like 2.5 years, really. And all of a sudden, that's kind of gone away, and it's not as good anymore.
It's not. And he's actually getting a little bit of help from last year's first-round pick, Tyree Wilson, playing a little better in recent weeks. But the Raiders were the team last year. And this is what makes it tough to analyze football, Sam. We're over here trying to like give credit to the Cardinals for playing above their talent level. I'm giving the Broncos credit, I think, for playing above their talent level. The Raiders did that down the stretch last year, where it was Max Crosby and who else? Like, what other names?
Right.
And when I say names, it's not about the names. Like, which other established, consistent producers are there on that side of the ball? There weren't a lot on the Raiders. A lot of those names, players on the Raiders last year, but they were playing above that level. And this year they're not. This year they're not on the defensive side of the ball. And Max Crosby is, again, on pace to probably his worst season in 4 or 5 years. So that's what's been tough, right? They have not been able to scheme it up, to play above their level, and they're going to go into another offseason where I'm going to say, hey, they need some defensive playmakers because they're hurting.
Yeah,
but they really found an offensive playmaker in Brock Bowers, who's not full must-see TV, but he's the best reason to watch the Raiders right now.
The best reason to watch the Raiders.
The best reason.
What a summation of Brock Bowers,
isn't it? Well, what else would be?
No, I mean, it's true, but that's kind of a sad indictment of where the Raiders are right now.
It used to be Max Crosby as the best reason for the Raiders, and he's still a very good player. But he was playing he was in this T.J. Watt, Aiden Hutchinson, Bosa level for a while. Myles Garrett, like he was in that conversation. He just hasn't been this season.
And I think it makes a huge difference to that defense. Like, it is problematic when it's only, quote unquote, Max Crosby playing at a defensive player of the year level, and the rest of the defensive line in particular isn't really standing up to that. But now he's not playing at that level. He's still playing well, but he's not playing all-pro defensive player of the year caliber, and the difference between the two is significant. I mean, it makes a huge difference to a defense that's already not great, even when he is playing out of his mind. So that's a factor. And if Max Crosby goes to being just relatively human, that's huge for Bo Nix. Like, if he doesn't have to deal with Crosby every single snap, great.
Yes. So 6.5, man. Let's make a pick here. Broncos at the Raiders. Over-under is just 41.5.
I'm going with Denver.
I'll also take Denver. Harry's also going to take Denver. Harry's never going to take the Raiders. He just doesn't.
You need to show him some old, AFL tape and the John Madden Raiders and those kinds of things. This is a Super Bowl team.
Harry just will never take a team that's 2-8.
Yeah.
He's just never going to take an underdog like that. Thursday Night Football. We're going to do it right now. Pittsburgh Steelers at the Cleveland Browns. Thursday, 8:15. Steelers favored by 3.5. They're 8-2. Browns are just 2-8. Again, Harry's not going to take the Browns. There's no way he took the Browns in this game.
Weather game.
And we got weather. I think
snowing outside right now.
I checked out the weather report.
Probably. At least it was a couple of hours ago when we started this podcast.
This is what made me think and brought up to you off air about my friends who are in the weather industry.
In the weather game.
Yes, they're in the weather game. Maybe have their own weather app. Like, if we cut to them really quick, here's a 30-second weather report for the game. They would do a better job of describing. When I read the weather, you're like right on the cusp of 32 to 38 degrees. You got some precipitation. It's a wintry mix. It feels like a wintry mix. Could be some snow, could be some rain, could be freezing rain. It's just right on that borderline from a temperature standpoint. But I feel like we should have a professional conveying that.
I think what we need is like a weather correspondent. We just need somebody standing out in miserable conditions to be like, it's horrible out here, Steve.
Oh, let's get intern Anthony. That's what we're gonna send him
on location
to the worst weather game every week on location, even if it's 2 days before the game. Doesn't matter.
And just be like 30 seconds. It's obnoxious out here. It's cold, snowing, freezing my balls off. It's not fun.
That'll bring some color to the game.
Exactly.
Here. So weather game with Pittsburgh. The over/under is 36.5. Now, 36.5 in a Jameis game.
Yeah.
That's
I mean, look, Jameis in weather.
Jameis game.
Just Jameis in the weather, in the conditions. You think Jameis is going to be like, it's a bit windy and snowy out here. I'm going to rain it back today.
Well, let me check down.
Right.
Has anybody checked the league ADOT since he started the last 3 weeks? I'm going to pull that up. I bet it's up half a yard.
So obviously Jameis in weather is going to be fun to watch. The other thing is, here comes Myles Garrett to ruin Dan Moore's, night, season, life, however long you want to put this. The
Dan
numbers.
Moore used to do it early. He'd get this game out there early in the year, and he'd be playing catch up with his grade.
Well, it usually at least occurred earlier in the year, so people didn't get the impression that Dan Moore was having a good season because he'd already had his ass handed to him by Myles Garrett at some point before anybody got out of control and was like, hey, quietly, Dan Moore's playing pretty well this year. In actuality, Dan Moore was playing pretty well in any given year outside of the games he played Myles Garrett. Like, I ran these numbers last year sometime. His PFF grade when he doesn't play Myles Garrett in his career is like 65, which is average to above average for an offensive tackle. Like, it's nondescript. It's not something you would focus on. It's just he's a capable starting tackle. His PFF grade when he does play Myles Garrett is like 15 or 20 or something. It's absurd. And so Dan Moore this season has a PFF grade of 72, something like that. This is the first Myles Garrett game. So how bad does it go for Dan Moore in game one against Myles Garrett? Myles Garrett, by the way, who unusually appears to have something of a chip on his shoulder going into this game because TJ Watt was somewhat dismissive or in fact bitter over Myles Garrett getting Defensive Player of the Year last year. Remember, JJ Watt was obviously...
You think that's a factor?
They asked him about it. He was basically, he was kind of critical. He was saying, look, you didn't hear me bitching about the award going to other people in previous years. I don't think he should be doing it either.
The Watt family.
The Watt family have created bad blood here.
The Watt family, like the Carr family, like to defend each other.
Yeah, but now what I'm saying is you have reigning Defensive Player of the Year, Myles Garrett, who in a typical season ruins the life of starting left tackle Dan Moore, extra motivated.
Found my stat. The league-wide average depth of target. By the way, yes, Myles Garrett and TJ Watt, obviously. I mean, the history there all the time has been TJ Watt has the knack for, the sack, the strip sack, the forced fumble. Myles Garrett has a knack for just wrecking the blocker in front of him, often 40% of the time, Dan Moore. And the ball's out so quickly it doesn't even matter. So in this one, Russ isn't get the ball out quickly.
No, that's the other element here.
So that's where, for years, when we were at PFF and had to, defend a grade or a stat or whatever.
Explain
a grade. We would say, well, Kenny Pickett got rid of the ball so quickly, you didn't see it, right? Or, he was about to get sacked and he just kind of
late
threw
career
it away.
Big Ben.
Whereas
2.2.
the Browns have Deshaun Watson or whoever holding the ball, so TJ Watt's getting the sack. Is Myles Garrett finally set up for the 3 or 4 sack game against the Steelers because he's got Russ back there?
Yeah, I genuinely think that's a factor in the Myles Garrett performance. Like if he has the standard game he has against Dan Moore Jr., the results will be more impactful because Russell Wilson is the quarterback.
The average depth of target in weeks in which Jameis Winston has not started is 8. The average depth of target for the entire league in weeks in which Jameis Winston has started is 8.4. He is literally almost a half a yard higher. He is worth almost half a yard higher of targeted depth across the entire league. Jameis Winston. 8.4 wit, 8 without. Jameis Winston.
Yeah, makes sense.
Like everything we talked about earlier in the season, fewer interceptions, more yak-centric, check downs, underneath. What's the reason? It's just strictly Jameis Winston not being a starter. We did have that as one of our theories.
Right. And the funny thing is,
it's kind of being proven out.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, Anthony Richardson is still higher than even Jameis.
I know. It is.
Genuinely, though, the classic narrative about Watt versus Myles Garrett is, in these games especially, TJ Watt makes the plays, Myles Garrett doesn't. He just gets the pressures or doesn't show up or whatever. If what we're saying is true, that Russell Wilson will magnify the impact that Myles Garrett beating Dan Moore over and over has, who makes the plays could end up determining this game. Like, does TJ Watt or Myles Garrett make the game-defining play? The strip sack, the forced fumble, the fumble recovery. Which one of those guys makes more of those plays may end up determining the outcome of this game.
Especially in the weather.
Yeah. I mean, the alternative is, as we said, Jameis Winston. I mean, A, he's fantastic entertainment. B, the ability for his performance to have zero or massive impact on the outcome of the games is phenomenal.
I don't know why you say that.
Because it's true.
That happened once.
It's happened multiple times in his career.
He was awful against the Chargers. He was very good against the Ravens. He got a little lucky.
Every quarterback has had games where they've had great games and not won, or terrible games and they've won. Jameis Winston's games, I am 100% convinced, have a much less tangible impact on wins and losses than any other quarterback in football.
Let's make some picks, man.
I believe I'm taking
Steelers
Pittsburgh
by 3.5. I'm going to take Cleveland here.
I'm taking the Steelers to cover.
I'm taking Jameis. I mean, you got to hammer the over with Jameis, too. Because, picks, field position, 90-yard touchdowns to Jerry Jeudy, 89-yard touchdowns to Jerry Jeudy. That whole shot that he threw to Elijah Moore was outstanding. Stuff's going to happen tonight.
Yeah, I mean, the other element is, the Browns' defense has been susceptible to big plays. Russell Wilson takes shots. There's going to be potentially big plays there for Steelers' offense as well.
There will be. All right, man. We got our picks in for that. Harry's taking Pittsburgh. Did I get that? We got 2 more games, but first, your PrizePicks lineup. Got to go through your PrizePicks lineup. My lineup was unveiled yesterday. You can download the PrizePicks app today. Use the code CheckTheMic. $50 instantly when you play $5.
And my PrizePicks lineup features a game tonight. I got to stop doing that because I keep ruining my week on Thursday night football.
Stop doing Thursday night.
Got to stop doing it. Anyway, have done it, but it's not my first pick. My first pick is Xavier Worthy, going for more than half a rushing and receiving touchdown against the Carolina Panthers defense. I feel like they've been close. I mean, they have been close. The last few weeks, we've seen inches, better footwork. Just keep your feet in. This Mahomes to Xavier Worthy thing is really close to being.
He had a receiving touchdown last week too.
I know, but they've been really close to putting together
the
monster
deep ball
performances.
They've missed 3 weeks in a row.
And now we're going up against Carolina, the defense that gives everybody a boost. I feel like that boost is enough to get them on the same page, get Xavier Worthy into the end zone, touchdown. That's my first pick. My second pick is our Thursday night football skin in the game. Jameis Winston is going to have more than 8.5 rushing yards.
Back to the QB rushing yards, huh?
TJ Watt, the best pass rush in the NFL. The Pittsburgh Steelers, they're going to get Jameis running like a madman in the snow, and Jameis Winston at some point is going to stumble, bumble, lurch his way for 9 or more yards. It's going to happen. Book it.
Through the wintry mix.
With snow in his eyes, no idea what's going on.
Oh, I hope there's so much weather.
Probably running backwards at the time. 9 yards or more.
All right, looking forward to that.
And then finally,
what if they just do one zone keeper for him?
That's all I need. I just need one play. It's going to come. Jaden Daniels will have more than 221.5 passing yards. So the Dallas Cowboys defense, a bounce-back game for Jaden Daniels, rough outing against the Eagles. Bounce back here. We're going to be reminded how good he is. 222 or more.
No, that's good unless Dallas's run defense is just so bad
that they don't even need to pass the ball.
But yeah, I like that. I like that one. That's a good lineup. Let's check out the recap here.
Check out the recap?
I think so.
There you go. Xavier Worthy, he's going to get in the end zone. Jameis Winston's going to have he's got 15. Easy money. And then Jaden Daniels to have more than 221.5 passing yards.
I like it. Neither one of us hit, but we've done well this year with our lineups.
I felt like we had a moral victory last week. Like the Eagles should have had a passing touchdown and didn't somehow in that game.
Yeah.
And that was the only thing that kept me away from winning.
So I'm going Caleb Williams more than 204.5 passing yards. That's going up against
Flores
defense. But they've given up the 5th most passing yards in the league.
Yeah.
So I think there's a volume aspect that they've given up. I know there could be some bad plays in there, but I like Caleb Williams with the passing yards. Juwan Jennings with a potentially hurt, banged up, or out Jair Alexander for the Green Bay Packers. I like Juwan Jennings going more than 60 and a half receiving yards here as their ex-receiver now in San Francisco. And then my one negative one, we're going to go Xavier Legette in this game against the Chiefs that we're going to be talking about in a minute here. The Panthers receiver Legette going less than 39 and a half receiving yards because I think they're going to have a tough time, the Panthers, throwing the ball against the Chiefs.
I could believe that.
Which is what we're talking about right now, Chiefs and Panthers. But yeah, you guys can go PrizePicks app, get it right now. Use the code CheckTheMic, $50 instantly. When you play $5, join us. I know some people have already joined in and started taking a look at some of our suggestions from a lineup perspective. So let's play together. Check the mic, $50 instantly when you play $5.
Let's go.
Chiefs at the Panthers. The Eric Eager Bowl. Chiefs favored by 10.5 here against the Panthers. Can the Chiefs bounce back from their one loss? They're 9-1 in Carolina against the 3-7 Panthers.
I mean, if they can't bounce back against the Carolina Panthers, we might have a story on our hands.
Look, I think the Panthers, if Bryce Young continues to play cleaner, play a little bit better the way he has these last couple of weeks, I think they'll be more competitive. They've been more competitive these last couple of weeks, and I think that's all you're looking for. If you're a Panthers fan, is pieces for the rebuild. Who's a part of the rebuild here?
Yeah, I mean, I also want to see, I think Bryce Young has played a lot better the last few weeks, even when the numbers haven't necessarily backed it up. He made some great throws. I think he has 4 big-time throws, essentially, since he's come back in the lineup. I would petition for maybe another 1 or 2 in that list. I don't have that authority anymore, but I would throw my suggestions in.
Send a text message, man.
So I think he's played a lot better. But the difficulty level gets cranked up against Spags, right? Can you do that against a really good defense? So I'm curious, can Bryce Young maintain that upward trajectory? I mean, people have made the point fairly that we're setting the bar really low for this sort of discussion on Bryce Young.
Yes.
Which is true, because it's not like he's played well. It's just that he's played a lot better than when he looked like the worst quarterback that's ever graced the field. So that's legit. But if he can maintain still looking better against a really good defense, that's another step in the right direction. And ultimately, that's all we're looking for is there anything salvageable from his career at this point? So I'm looking for that. Or does this just completely break him down again because Spags is one of the best defensive coordinators in the game? The Chiefs' defense is amazing. And Carolina still isn't very good.
Yeah, I have my concerns about Bryce Young going up against Spags. I mean, they've handled pressure better. Again, part of the reason why we've been so more optimistic about Bryce Young is just he juked a guy and ran for 9 yards. It's a simple play, but he wasn't doing that often enough last year, and handling pressure better, pocket movement's been better, but Spags makes all that difficult. He made it difficult for Bo Nix a couple weeks ago. He makes it difficult. Josh Allen overcame it last week, but he's Josh Allen, right? So I think that's going to be tough for Carolina moving the ball. And the reason why I didn't like Xavier Legette's projection is Kansas City makes for tight window throws, right? Yeah. For Buffalo to win that game last week, 2 big-time throws from Josh Allen to Amari Cooper. They I mentioned the stat last week. If you attack the slot, you can attack the slot with a slot receiver against Kansas City and maybe get those yak plays and everything. But anything outside the numbers is going to be a challenge because that's how they play. They compress passing lanes and they get after the quarterback pretty well, and they also stop the run. That's the one other piece. If Carolina, because again, perspective-wise, if they're going to keep it close, maybe somehow pull off an upset with Chuba Hubbard back there and Jonathan Brooks.
Yeah.
Second-round running back out of Texas, likely making his NFL debut here. I don't know how good he's going to be coming off the injury, but I loved Brooks as my top running back coming out of the draft. I thought he's got great vision, great feel. Maybe if they've got some kind of 2-headed monster running the ball against a really good run defense again, but if they could play that game, 15-play type of drives, that's Carolina's only chance of at least probably keeping it close into the fourth quarter.
Most people's RB1 in this last draft class. So, yeah, excited to see him in his debut and just see what he looks like. It might not be the 100% version of Jonathan Brooks, but hell, it's just going to be fun to see him take the field for the first time. I will say, with your Xavier Legette hate, Trent McDuffie has been phenomenal in the NFL so far. He is, however, 5'11" and 190 pounds. Xavier Legette is 6'3". What he measured at in 225-ish? Like a big boy.
No, he was 6'1". Remember, you thought he was
all right, he was supposed to be 6'3". Anyway, but he's 225 pounds. He's big. And the important part about all that was he was supposed to be this contested catch monster. Do you know what his contested catch rate is right now?
Poor.
No.
Is it good?
Yes.
81.9%. Didn't know that.
He has caught over 80% of his contested targets. So, and Trent McDuffie's given up some plays in the last few weeks. If they want to just give the big man a shot, just put the ball in the air, Bryce. Give him a chance. He outweighs the guy he's going up against by like 35 pounds. Give him a go.
No, not this week. Don't do it this week. Chiefs have a chance. So they got the Panthers this week. They've got the Raiders in the Black Friday game next week. And then they hit that. They don't hit the weird Christmas stretch yet, but then they have the Chargers. I think that's Sunday Night Football.
They've also got a bunch of reinforcements on the way, but probably this feels like the game where you'd be like, we don't need to put him
Isaiah Pacheco and Charles Omenihu both back to practice this week.
But this feels like if you're, when do we put him on? It's like, one more week. We one more week of rest. We don't need him against Carolina.
Probably not. All right, man. Chiefs by 10.5 here in Carolina. Where are you going with it?
I'm going with Kansas City. As we said, people are right. We have been. The standards are very low for Bryce Young.
I don't like this match.
I feel like he just doesn't do well against Kansas City here.
Harry's taking Kansas City. I'm taking Kansas City as well. Yeah, I don't like the matchup for the Panthers pass game. I'm interested to see if they can get Jonathan Brooks going with Chuba Hubbard. And if they were going to keep it close, Chiefs need to probably make a lot of mistakes, which they haven't made this year. All right, last game. Tennessee Titans at the Houston Texans. Texans favored by 7.5. It's Sunday at 1 o'clock. 7-4 Texans and the 2-8 Tennessee Titans.
So it didn't really happen the last time I said this, but this does feel like another potential place where Houston's defense just gives Will Levis endless medium opportunities. This is a nasty defense to be going up against for anybody. They've got a really good pass rush. They've got really good coverage on the back end. It's a difficult assignment for any quarterback, even one that doesn't have a history of memes.
Levis was joking to him, so he was making fun of himself the other day, saying, last 2 weeks I haven't thrown the ball underhand. Or, there's some self-awareness there that I think has shown up in his play. I mentioned that on Monday. He's been sacked 12 times over the last 2 weeks, and I would say off the top of my head, 3, 4, 5 of them, he probably could have thrown the ball away. He probably could have done something to avoid the sack. It does feel like there's something where he's maybe too self-aware of the turnovers. However, he's still taking a few of those deep shots, and they had some big plays against Minnesota. So I'm interested to see Levis and his ability to throw the ball down the field, because he's been pretty good at that the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, he has. It's tough. He really needs to have not just a clean game, but he needs to hit a couple of those deep shots as well, which is hard to come by against this Houston defense. I feel it's tough to imagine this being a game where the Titans have a huge amount of success on offense, which obviously swings the attention back to the other side of the ball. And Tennessee's defense is still good. In particular, they've got some big, nasty bodies up front on the defensive line. Houston's offensive line is still not great. It's better than it was when it was a complete and total turnstile at left guard. It's still vulnerable. And, Jeffrey Simmons is capable of those beast mode games where he takes over. The Titans have got bodies to disrupt that line.
Simmons had one of those games last week. Didn't get to highlight it on Monday, but he was very disruptive against the Vikings.
Simmons is like 3-tech Vita Vea. He's like, on your day, that dude's he can be Chris Jones in any given game.
Yeah.
He just doesn't do it as often as Chris Jones.
And again, from our perspective, years of kind of relying on the PFF grading, which affects every single play, I think there's a perception that Jeffrey Simmons is always dominant.
Right.
In this Chris Jones category or in this Aaron Donald category, always disruptive. That Vita Vea is in this Dexter Lawrence, always disruptive. You've highlighted this a ton. There are some unbelievable plays where they are unstoppable, but it doesn't show up every week. It doesn't show up every play. They're capable. I was a huge Jeffrey Simmons fan. I always have been.
Yeah.
But There's only like a handful of games where I remember him really taking over, where like when you watch Chris Jones, like it's like every week this dude is making plays.
But Simmons is even more sort of confounding or confusing than some of those other guys, where it's not like it's a random play every now and again. Like he has whole games where he looks like Chris Jones and just absolutely dominates start to finish. It's just that he then doesn't have another one for a month. That's even stranger, where it's like, you can do that every single play. Like you've shown, you can have games where he just wrecks shop. The first time he played in the NFL, he had like one of those games where he just crushed people, pressure all over the place. Looked like, oh, wow, this guy, it was worth the wait. He had the knee injury at draft time. He slid because of it. They took him anyway. He was on the shelf for a bit. But his debut looked like the best defensive tackle in the game already. This guy's going to be a superstar. And then that doesn't happen every week. If it did, he would be Chris Jones. He would be the heir to Aaron Donald. But the point being, he's capable of a game where he just goes ham against what is not a great offensive line.
And then as far as Houston's offense, I said it the other day, probably yesterday's show, I still think the ceiling has not been approached at all this season. And I know Stephon Diggs is out for the year, but when Nico Collins is back, now that he's back, him and
you
Tank
can see the impact that he made the second he came back.
Huge impact. And then you look at C.J. Stroud, number 19 in PFF grade. I mean, he is like 15th to 20th in any metric, PFF, QBR, EPA, whatever you want to call it, middle of the pack, lower middle of the pack, really. And this was supposed to be Stroud taking that next step toward superstardom. A lot of factors around that. We talked about the offensive line play, being behind schedule. Our friend Bobby's taking heat for his play calling. There's a lot of things going on there in Houston, but I still believe in what they're capable of because of what we saw last year. So this would be one of those games. Again, it's a tough Titans defense.
Yeah.
They've given up the fewest pass yards per game in the NFL. I think they're good at not giving up yards.
They are. I mean,
not making things a little bit more difficult for you, even though they've given up more points than you would expect.
I think this game could be one where it's actually a sneaky good game for most of it, but ultimately Houston ends up easing away and covering anyway. Like it's like a touchdown.
If Levis plays the way he has been, he's flipping the field with some plays the last couple of weeks.
It's like a touchdown line in favor of Houston. I feel like they might cover anyway, but for the majority of the game, that's up in the air.
Well, is that your pick here?
Yes, Houston to cover, but that's in jeopardy for most of the game.
I'll also take Houston to cover the 7.5. I'll do that. But yeah, I think could be a sneaky good game this week. First time they're playing in this division rival. Harry's also going to take the Texans here. And that's it. 6 teams on a bye. It's like an off week for us.
It's just a light week.
Just general programming note. Appreciate everybody watching our Week 12 NFL preview. Next week's preview is going to be for Week 13. It's going to be on Wednesday. So there'll be no midweek Wednesday show. There'll be no Thursday show. The Wednesday show will be the preview. So let me clarify that. We're going to be here Monday, reviewing Week 12. We're going to be here Wednesday, previewing Week 13. There's no third show next week. Tonight, we'll be instantly reacting to Steelers-Browns. And then tomorrow, just YouTube exclusive, I got Mike Renner on the show talking some draft. He's
Young
back.
Michael.
We got his top playmakers, receivers, tight ends, running backs, offensive, defensive linemen. We're going through all the position groups tomorrow morning.
Like it.
Right here on YouTube. So thanks to everybody for tuning in. We'll see you again Monday morning. More Check the Mic.